Chapter 58:26. It was obvious that everyone was at their wits' end, but Di Bei-chun was willing to share it with everyone. Could it be that he was provoked by Han Bowen and decided to do something so outrageous? Han Bowen was also stunned. For a moment, he wondered if he had heard wrongly. Although he had said so, he knew that no one else would do such a thing. However, Di Bei-chun actually had such a plan? Nangong Yuqing was also stunned. He didn't understand what Di Bei-chun was thinking. If he had said so earlier, then things wouldn't have become so troublesome. However, Di Bei-chun's next words made Han Bowen and the others' faces turn ugly. In just a short moment, their faces turned red, and even their ears turned the color of pig liver. Their expressions were as disgusting as if they had eaten a fly. I'm willing to share with everyone, but I have a request. They can't see it. Di Bei-chun used his hand to divide the area into the Nangong family, Blue Cloud sect, and Xiao Yao Palace. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly, and her jet-black eyes couldn't help but smile. Di Bei-chun wanted to anger Han Bowen and the others to death. As long as we deal with them, I'll take it out. How about it? Di Bei-chun raised his eyebrows, and his eyes were full of ridicule. Since Han Bowen wanted to make a fuss about it, then he would make Han Bowen speechless. However, on another point, he had to thank Han Bowen. After this incident, his view of the Chu family had changed. Although the grudges between them had been resolved, there were too many situations in this world where people didn't get along. Chu Yingming didn't want to make a move in such a situation, which was enough to show that he had changed his mind. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also looked at Chu Yingming differently. Turning hostility into friendship wasn't a bad choice. No problem. We also have a problem. Leave it to us. A few groups responded one after another. If it was said that the difficulty of robbing them was too great before, now that Di Bei-chun was willing to share, the groups they had to deal with were the Blue Cloud sect, Nangong clan, and Xiao Yao Palace. Between the two teams, this request was undoubtedly much simpler. I don't have a problem with that either. Chu Yingming lightly smiled. He wanted to give him a taste of his own medicine. However, Di Bei-chun's move was even more ruthless. Han Bowen was really dumbfounded at this moment. He didn't expect Di Bei-chun to be so abnormal that he actually came up with such a method. Feeling the dangerous gazes of the crowd on him, his heart could not help but tighten. He could not stop his footsteps from retreating, only wanting to escape as soon as possible. Nangong Yuqing was completely dumbfounded. He regretted it to death. Why did he follow the people of the Blue Cloud sect here? After coming here, not only did he reap all the benefits, but it also deepened the conflict between the two sides. Most importantly, he still had to face the pursuit of everyone. Wasn't this just shooting himself in the foot? He couldn't help but envy Chu Yingming. This guy was truly amazing. He was even able to endure the situation earlier. If he could endure it as well, this wouldn't have happened. Go! Chun Feng shouted coldly. Almost immediately, everyone charged toward Han Bowen's group. Noticing this, Gu Wenchang's group did not dare to hesitate and quickly retreated. Chapter 58:27. Damn it, this Di Bei-chun is simply a madman. Nangong Yuqing cursed. His intestines were green with regret. After knowing Di Bei-chun's temperament, he should not have chosen to provoke him at such a time. Although Di Bei-chun had only been in the upper realm for a few years, Nangong Yuqing knew from the time in the Immortal Cloud's secret domain that Di Bei-chun would always do something amazing. The decision he made now was quite exaggerated. However, when he thought about it carefully, it was quite in line with his style. The cultivators from the Nangong family, the Azure Cloud sect, and the Xiao Yao Palace all spread their legs and quickly ran in all directions. At such a time, it was a competition of speed. If they fell behind, the result would be obvious. Gu Wenchang was no less depressed than Nangong Yuqing. He had never dealt with Di Bei-chun before. How could he have known that this person would do something so outrageous? He was inexplicably implicated by the Blue Cloud sect. One could imagine how depressed he was. He also wanted to know what kind of treasure Di Bei-chun had obtained. However, he had no hope of obtaining it now and was even being chased by everyone. The moment Di Bei-chun saw Han Bowen running away, his figure flashed, and the sword in his hand flashed. It was an extremely thin sword light. It was hidden in the sunlight and was not obvious. However, the sharp feeling it gave off was something that could not be ignored. Han Bowen, who was running away, felt an extremely sharp aura approaching him. His scalp felt like it was going to explode under this sharp sword aura. He could not help but turn his head and look behind him. He saw the extremely thin sword aura approaching him at lightning speed, as if it was chasing after his soul. A dazzling light dazzled his eyes, startling him and causing him to stop running. Bang! Han Bowen's body crashed to the ground. A bloody hole appeared between his eyebrows. Evidently, he was no longer breathing. Chen Feng looked at Di Beichen's move in astonishment. Even though he was far away, he could still feel how terrifying that sword aura was. Even with his cultivation, he had to be careful when facing this sword aura. It seemed that Di Beichen's improvement was also very shocking. No wonder, Qin, Hongliang died in your hands. Your strength has indeed improved, Chen Feng said with a smile. However, do you want to take advantage of this opportunity to leave? It was such a pity that he had to share the treasures that he had obtained with great difficulty. Taking advantage of the fact that almost everyone was chasing after Nangong Yuqing and the others, it was a good choice to leave. Hearing this, Di Beichen smiled and shook his head. No need. Actually, what we got this time is just a map. It's not a powerful treasure. Chen Feng understood. So that's the case. Is this a map of the primordial battlefield? Originally, he was still thinking about what kind of precious skill it was to share with everyone. Now that he understood, he completely understood that a map was indeed worthy of being shared with everyone. That's right. This is the map of this place. Right now, almost everyone doesn't understand the situation of the ancient battlefield. A map is actually very useful. Chen Feng smiled. It was similar to how he had wandered around the ancient battlefield for so long without knowing where he was. Oh, right. Along the way, did you see my elder brother? Di Beichen asked. Yin Zhu as well. We still haven't met up with them. Chapter 58-28. Who is he with? Di Beichen's eyes lit up. Along the way, he had not heard any news about his elder brother. He could not help but worry. I heard someone mention it sporadically. Chen Feng turned his head and looked behind him. A cultivator immediately said, I heard that young Master Di is with the Bailey family. Oh, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice had a trace of surprise. In fact, she also wanted to meet up with the Bailey family as soon as possible. No matter what, she was the head of the Bailey family. Although she was from 1,000 years ago, she was still inseparable from the Bailey family. That was his responsibility. However, along the way, she had not met any cultivators from the Bailey family. She felt somewhat helpless. Elder brother is with them. You don't have to worry. Di Beichen naturally knew what Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking. He believed that as long as everyone met up, the possibility of danger in this ancient battlefield was relatively small. Moreover, elder brother was smart. With him leading the team, there would be no problem. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly with a smile. She believed in Di Xiaofeng's strength. No news about Yinzhu? By now, most of them had met up. Even if they had not met up with Lin Taxing and the others, they knew that they were together when they were at the pavilion in the middle of the lake. There was no need to worry. Mo Yunjue was the only one they had yet to meet. Chen Feng frowned and looked at the people behind him. Have you heard any news about young Master Mo? Their team had also gradually met up during the journey. Therefore, he was not very clear about some news. Everyone shook their heads. We have not met him, nor have we heard any news about him. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had a slightly complicated expression. They had been moving together all along. Why did most of them already have news about Mo Yunjue except for now? Could it be that when he entered the ancient battlefield, he was teleported to a very remote location? Di Beichen noticed the worry in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes and comforted her softly. Don't worry. He will be fine. They were very clear about Mo Yunjue's strength. Even among the many outstanding geniuses, he was still an extremely outstanding existence. In addition, Mo Yunjue also cultivated this sword art. As long as he did not encounter any great danger, he would be able to escape unscathed. By the way, since you have returned safely, how is the situation with Jun Lingxuan and the other two? Did they directly solve this problem? Chen Feng asked straightforwardly. Now that their relationship was extremely close, he understood the thoughts of Di Bei Chun and the others quite well. There was no need to hide it. Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou were definitely two stumbling blocks. If he could get rid of them in the ancient battlefield, it would undoubtedly be great. Hearing this, Di Bei Chun shook his head slightly. The situation is somewhat beyond our expectations. They ran away. Chun Feng frowned. Logically speaking, with the strength of Di Bei Chun and the others, they should not have a chance to escape. However, if they missed this opportunity, it would be much more troublesome to find another one. That's not the case. The one who ran away was not him, but us. Jiang Wenyin sighed with emotion. Now that he thought about it, he could not help but feel apprehensive. Chapter 58-29. Looking at Chun Feng's incredulous expression, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but laugh. Chun Feng, who had always been calm, rarely showed such an expression. What are you laughing at? Chun Feng looked at them doubtfully. They should be extremely nervous after such a thing happened, yet they could still laugh. Jun Lingxuan is dead. Dead? Chun Feng frowned. Were you deliberately making fun of me just now? To be precise, his soul is gone, but his body is still alive. Chun Feng was slightly stunned. Then, his eyes suddenly widened, and his face was filled with horror. Jun Lingxuan was actually possessed? The situation was actually so thrilling after you enter the lake. We were lucky that we were able to escape. Jiang Wenyin spread his hands. Even though so many days had passed, he still felt an indescribable palpitation when he thought about it. So, the current Jun Lingxuan is no longer the previous Jun Lingxuan? Chen Feng was somewhat stunned. Originally, Jun Lingxuan's death was a good thing. However, with the current situation, things seem to have become more complicated. Then what do you plan to do? If we can kill him, we will kill him, Di Beichin said indifferently. The cultivators of the Great Devil sect were also shocked by this news. Who would have thought that the dignified young master of the Jun family would end up like this? Have you heard any news about Jun Lingxuan along the way? Linger asked. Chun Feng shook his head slightly. Everyone only knows that Jun Lingxuan disappeared with you. Before I saw you, I didn't even hear any news about you. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. Logically speaking, Jun Lingxuan would not have disappeared after appearing. However, it was strange that there was no news after so long. Qing Devil himself came from the ancient battlefield. Do you think that he has some base in the ancient battlefield? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. This seemed to be a possibility. It's possible. Di Beichin nodded. However, we don't know where his base is. Perhaps he has just succeeded in possessing someone and needs time to adapt to his new body. Just as everyone was talking, Chu Yingming and the others returned. Feeling everyone's attention, Chu Yingming said, Nangong Yuqing ran away. Except for some people who ran faster, everyone else stayed behind. Everyone was not surprised by this result. Nangong Yuqing's cultivation was outstanding among the cultivators here, so it was not easy to kill him. In fact, they did not intend to start a massacre. They just wanted to teach the other party a lesson and let him know that they were not to be trifled with. Moreover, the Nangong family, the Nangong Yuqings, the situation would be worse. After Yuqing, Chun. Everyone stood still, and for a moment, no one was the first to speak. What we obtained earlier wasn't anything special, Lin Feng said with a smile. Di Beichin's voice gradually grew louder, but when these words fell into everyone's ears, it was not just ordinary depression. They had spent so much effort. Could it be that Di Beichin was fooling them? What we obtained before was a map of the ancient battlefield. It was because of this that we were able to share it with everyone. Chapter 58-30. So that's how it is. The map is also very good. It's better to know the environment than to wander around like a headless fly. Bailey Hongzhuang took out the map. Of course, this was not the original map, but a map drawn later on. The mountains and rivers on the map were all the same. The only difference was that there were no markings. After knowing that the secret of this place could not be kept, Bailey Hongzhuang redrew the lake, Mid-Lake Pavilion, and the Blood Spirit Stone. As for the other places, she directly ignored them. Those were the places they were going to explore. It could be said that they had grasped a great opportunity. How could she just tell everyone? Everyone was originally full of doubts about the map. However, when they looked at the environment on the map and connected it to the places they had been to before, they realized that it was a real map. It really is a map of the ancient battlefield. I came from here before. That's right, I came from here. Almost everyone found the place they had come from. Originally, they did not understand how big the places they had been to were in the ancient battlefield. At this moment, everyone finally had an intuitive understanding. No one suspected that the map was fake because none of the people who had come to the ancient battlefield with them could draw it. The only explanation was that this map came from the ancient battlefield. Look, this is the location of the Lake Mid-Lake Pavilion, right? A man pointed at the Lake Mid-Lake Pavilion on the map, and his eyes lit up. Almost everyone noticed the location of the symbol. The Lake Mid-Lake Pavilion's inheritance had already been obtained, and it had nothing to do with them. However, when they noticed the red stones that were drawn on the area, they could not help but look excited. The red stone seems to be pointing to this place. Chu Yingming raised his head and looked at Di Beichun and the others. He could not help but wonder if the inheritance in this red place had already fallen into the hands of Di Beichun and the others. After a short moment of excitement, everyone thought of this. If the inheritance had already fallen into the hands of Di Beichun and the others, then there was no point in being happy right now. We also just arrived here today, and we encountered the scene that you guys encountered, said the old man. The magnetic voice was as calm as ever. Looking at Di Beichun's calm face, everyone inexplicably began to believe him. This news was undoubtedly extremely good news for everyone. Expressions of pleasant surprise quietly surfaced on everyone's faces. Since that's the case, let's go and take a look, someone suggested. Everyone couldn't wait any longer. Ever since they realized that the clouds were different, they couldn't wait to get here as soon as possible. However, they had to wait for so long to get here. Di Beichun and the others looked at each other. Everyone had a tacit understanding and pretended that they had never been here. Although it was a little depressing to have to share this treasure with everyone had already gained a lot in the past 3 days. The group continued forward and soon arrived at the area where the blood spirit stones were located. However, looking at the empty ground in front of them, everyone was stunned. Isn't there a red stone on the map? Why is there nothing here? Chapter 58:31. Facing everyone's questioning gazes, Di Beichun calmly said, "This is also my first time here, so how would I know?" Hearing this indifferent question, everyone withdrew their gazes and continued to search the area. Since the red stone was drawn on the map, it should be here. However, no inheritance can be obtained so easily. Maybe this is a test. Chu Yingming analyzed the situation. He didn't doubt Di Beichun's words. If Di Beichun really obtained the inheritance here, then there was no need for him to hide it. Even if they knew this, their strength couldn't compare to Di Beichun's group. Since he said so, it meant it was true. Therefore, Chu Yingming was very serious in his search. Not only him, but everyone present was also trying their best to find it. All of them were people who often went through experience and had gone through many tests. Although this kind of confusing situation didn't happen often, it wasn't unheard of. As long as they searched hard, they would eventually find it. In order not to be discovered, Di Beichun's group also searched everywhere, even though they knew the blood spirit stone only appeared at night. Nangong Yuqing ran for a long time and found that no one was chasing after him. He stopped and breathed a sigh of relief. Soon, the disciples of the Nangong family gathered together. Looking at the number of cultivators in the family, Nangong Yuqing's face became ashen. That damn Di Beichun. Nangong Yuqing couldn't help but curse. He was about to explode in anger. On one hand, it was because Di Beichun had gone too far. On the other hand, he was annoyed at his wrong decision. If it wasn't for his wrong judgment, this situation wouldn't have happened. "Young master, what should we do now?" Nangong Yuqing was silent for a moment, then waved his hand and said, "Let's go. We can only accept our bad luck today. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. In the future, we will have a chance to take revenge." He also wanted to go back, but thinking about the strength of the other party, going back was equivalent to suicide. Therefore, this was the only way. Originally, Nangong Yuqing's mood was extremely bad, but after seeing the situation of the Blue Cloud sect and Xiaoyao Palace, he felt somewhat comforted. This was because the other two sects had really suffered heavy losses. Everyone was trying to find the Blood Spirit Stone, but they didn't find anything. However, they naturally found that the ground here was somewhat unusual, so they were sure that this place wasn't simple. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the potholes that appeared in front of her. This scene was really not ordinary. A few days ago, before they had discovered any clues, they had also used this stupid method, but the cruel reality told them that it was useless. Di Bei Chun and Bailey Yin were already sitting on the ground in a very free and easy manner, watching the sweaty digging while they themselves rested. However, at this moment, a surprise voice was heard. "Look, there's something here." As soon as this was said, everyone's attention was drawn. Di Bei Chun and the others looked at each other. They were somewhat surprised. Was this person's luck so good that he actually dug up a blood spirit stone during the day? Chapter 58:32. "Look, what's this?" The man looked at the rod in front of him and tried to pull it out with his hand. However, he realized that he could not move it no matter how hard he tried. This thing is so strange. It can't be pulled out at all. Some of the cultivators around them were eager to try as well. However, after a few more attempts, they helplessly confirmed that the rod could not be pulled out. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. Previously, they had not noticed the existence of this thing. Could it be that there were other inheritances here aside from the Blood Spirit Stone? Murong Jing and the others were also shocked. It seemed that their previous discovery was not thorough enough. If these people had not arrived, perhaps they would not have discovered this at all. I wonder what this thing is for. Linger frowned. "I think this thing looks a little like a mechanism." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look again. She felt that Ling Er's words were not without reason. "It does look a little similar." Bailey Hongzhuang then said to the man, "Why don't we try to dig deeper? Won't we find out what it is then?" "I have the same idea." The man chuckled. He no longer hesitated and immediately began to move. However, he wasn't the only one working this time. Everyone wanted to know what this thing was for, so they all began to dig around the location of the long rod. With so many people working together, their speed was naturally very impressive. In just a short while, the real situation appeared in front of everyone. So this thing isn't for pulling, it's for pushing. The man looked at the mechanism in front of him and pulled the rod. Hey! Everyone clearly did not expect the man to move so quickly. He did not even consider the consequences before he pulled the mechanism. In an instant, everyone quickly retreated and vigilantly observed the changes in their surroundings. No matter what happened, they would react immediately. Bailey Hongzhuang also looked around vigilantly. Even they did not know what this mechanism was for. Perhaps the Blood Spirit Stone was only one of the treasures. There might be other inheritances underground that they had never thought of. Time gradually passed. Everyone was surprised to find that the hole that they had dug was gradually returning to its original state as if it had never existed. What's going on? Are people not allowed to dig here? Everyone looked at each other. This situation was very strange. Chapter 58:33. Bailey Hongzhuang checked the ground again. However, this time, she found a blood spirit stone. After discovering this, she couldn't help but stare blankly. Only after double-checking did she realize that she hadn't seen wrongly. Everyone saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had started digging without saying anything. Doubt appeared in their eyes. What is Bailey Hongzhuang doing? I don't know. Could it be that she found something underground? Bailey Hongzhuang's movements were very fast. Not long after, she stopped digging and took out a dazzling fiery red stone. Red stone. After noticing this, everyone's eyes lit up. Didn't they come here for this red stone? Chun Feng looked at the blood spirit stone in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand in astonishment. He couldn't help but ask, "Hongzhuang, can I take a look at it?" Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and handed the blood spirit stone to Chun Feng. Take a look. The origin energy contained in this thing is very abundant. After Chun Feng took the blood spirit stone, He felt the incomparably pure origin energy. His calm face couldn't hide his pleasant surprise. The origin energy in this thing is even more amazing than a high-grade spirit stone. Although the people around him couldn't feel it, just hearing Chun Feng's words filled them with excitement. A treasure even more amazing than a high-grade spirit stone. This thing might not be comparable to some heavenly treasures, but for cultivators, this was what they needed the most. So this is the red stone on the map. Chu Yingming couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. It seemed like they had come to the right place. There was actually such a treasure underground. Miss Bailey, how did you find this red stone? A cultivator asked tentatively. Not only the others, even Jiang Wenyin and the others were curious. A few days ago, when they were here, they had done some research. As long as it was daytime, it was impossible to find a blood spirit stone. Use your spiritual energy to sense the ground. The blood spirit stone is right here, Bailey Hongzhuang said. This was actually not a secret. Everyone had tried it before, but she discovered that the reason why she could find it underground was because it happened after the switch was turned on. As Bailey Hongzhuang finished speaking, everyone tried to use their mental energy to check. This ground is really strange. There doesn't seem to be anything special about it, but it's really too difficult for my mental power to penetrate it. My mental power can only penetrate 2 meters. I can't go any further than that. Di Beichen also used his mind power to sense the ground. Soon, he discovered a blood spirit stone. At the same time, many cultivators also gained something. Surprised voices could be heard one after another. Although this excavation situation was very different from everyone's usual image, everyone was still immersed in it. Such a harvest was simply too delightful. Why did the situation change after the switch was turned on? Linger frowned slightly. This situation was good, but it was completely different from what they had experienced yesterday. Bailey Hongzhuang had a conjecture in her mind. Just as she was about to speak, she heard Di Beichen say, "Perhaps this is a place specially used to train mental strength." "I think so too." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "This ground has a great resistance to mental power, and the blood spirit stone is underground. If we don't know where the blood spirit stone is and directly dig it out, who knows how much time we'll waste." Chapter 58:34. Mental power was also known as spiritual sense. For cultivators, it was undoubtedly one of the most important methods. When a situation in front of one's eyes could not be seen clearly with the naked eye, mental power would play a huge role. To a certain extent, momentum and pressure were inseparable from mental power. In many situations, mental power would be used. Once mental power was increased, a cultivator's sensitivity would also increase greatly. However, if one wanted to increase their cultivation, they could cultivate. If they wanted to increase their mental power, the process was much more complicated than other methods. Many cultivators found it very difficult to increase their mental power, and they could not even find the corresponding method. Bailey Hongzhuang also had an urgent need to increase her mental power. If she wanted to summon other stronger contracted beasts or increase the number of contracted beasts, she needed stronger mental power. Previously, she had used medicinal pills to increase her mental power. Indeed, she had made considerable progress. Unfortunately, heaven and earth treasures to increase one's mental power were hard to come by. Even if she had refined some medicinal pills back then, she had squandered them all in a short period of time. Of course, her mental power was much stronger than before. When she used the method again, she could extend the time by a lot. The increase in mental power was far slower than the increase in cultivation. Although the increase in cultivation could lead to some improvement in mental power, the best method was still to cultivate mental power. The situation in front of them seemed to be a place specially set up to increase mental power. Even if it was not confirmed, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that this was the closest judgment to the truth. The reason why they had not been in such a situation a few days ago was because they did not find any mechanism. This place is specially set up to increase mental power. Murong Jing was a little surprised. Normally, there were many training places used to increase one's strength, but there were very few mechanisms that could be used to increase mental power. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. You could try to use your mental power to penetrate the ground to look for blood spirit stones. In the process of searching, your mental power will be consumed much faster than usual. The feeling of exhausting your mental power is very uncomfortable. However, every time it's completely exhausted, your mental power will recover and increase slightly. Di Beichun also spoke up. I see. Jiang Wenyin understood. Although they had never experienced such a situation before, they had to admit that if all of this was true, then it was indeed a good opportunity to increase their spiritual power. If they could take advantage of this opportunity to improve themselves, it would be of great help to everyone. Moreover, the rewards were also very generous. Everyone stopped chatting and focused their attention on finding the blood spirit stone. This kind of good opportunity was hard to come by. No one knew how many blood spirit stones there were here. If someone snatched them away, they would have nothing left. At this time, the strength of one's mental power was also revealed. The stronger his mental power, the deeper he could penetrate into the ground, and the higher his chances of finding a blood spirit stone. Cultivators who didn't have a strong enough mental strength could only find the scattered blood spirit stones on the surface. They could only rely on luck to find them. On the other hand, those with stronger mental strength would be able to search much faster. Of course, the more mental strength they expended, the faster their search speed would be. Chapter 58:35. This area was extremely large. Even though there were so many cultivators gathered here, it still seemed very spacious and empty. Because of this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but sigh at the generosity of the Immortal Region's cultivators. She didn't know how they'd made this land so special, but it was already very rare for them to think of such a method. Sure enough, no matter what they wanted to improve, there was a corresponding method. It was just that they hadn't found it before. Everyone lowered their heads and searched. After obtaining the first blood spirit stone, everyone understood that it was an excellent treasure. Compared to searching aimlessly in other places, it was better to stay here. After all, the harvest here could be seen. Night slowly fell. Bailey Hongzhuang originally wondered if the blood spirit stones would be as active as before. However, when the time was up, that situation didn't appear again. This was the change after the switch was pressed. It could be used to train mental power, but the speed at which they obtained blood spirit stones was undoubtedly much slower. I think that it wasn't a bad thing that we didn't find the switch before. Otherwise, if we wanted to collect as many blood spirit stones as we did before, I'm afraid that we'd have to stay here for a long time. Morong Jing lowered his voice. Although they could search for blood spirit stones all day long now, they had to expend a lot more energy than before. Once their mental power was exhausted, they had to sit down and rest. Mental power recovered slower than origin power, so they could only recover by sleeping. This process was undoubtedly much longer. I think so too, huh? Jiang Wenyin chuckled. However, since it can improve our mental power, it's also very good. We'll just treat it as training. Morong Jing nodded slightly. However, this feeling of exhausting our mental power is really unpleasant. Just as the two of them were discussing the top-heavy situation after exhausting their mental power, Di Beichun's voice suddenly rang out. After increasing your mental power, if someone wants to take over your body, it'll be very difficult. If your mental power is strong enough, you might be able to directly destroy your opponent's soul. Murong Jing and Jiang Wenyin's expressions instantly changed. They no longer had any thoughts of complaining. When they thought about how Jun Lingxuan had fallen into such a situation, their hearts trembled. This kind of death was too cruel. No one could accept it. Although the process of increasing one's mental strength was very painful, with such benefits, what was there to complain about? The amount of mental power consumed by the soil was astonishing. In addition, blood spirit stones were buried at different depths. Usually, blood spirit stones within 2 meters of each other were easily discovered. Unfortunately, there were only a few blood spirit stones at this depth. More blood spirit stones were buried even deeper. Therefore, after searching for a while, it became difficult to find them again. When Bailey Hongzhuang took out another blood spiritual stone from the ground, the cultivator beside her was in disbelief. I searched there before, but I didn't see any blood spirit stones. He had just walked over from that area. He was still wondering why Bailey Hongzhuang had gone there, but the result made him blush. Don't be silly. Isn't this simple? It must be because Bailey Hongzhuang's spiritual power is stronger than yours, so she can penetrate deeper and see the blood spirit stones. Chapter 58:36. Even with his spiritual power, he felt as if he had encountered an extremely hard rock after penetrating 2 meters into the ground. No matter how hard he tried, he could not penetrate it. For cultivators, there might be differences in cultivation and combat strength, but the difference in spiritual power was not that great. After all, no one had a way to increase their spiritual power. They had always improved their cultivation along with it. It was too difficult to be much stronger than ordinary people. Don't forget that Bailey Hongzhuang is a grade 9 alchemist. Alchemists have stronger spiritual power than ordinary people like us. Moreover, she is the Saint of the Light. The woman beside him raised her eyebrows. Although she did not want to admit it, she had to admit that Bailey Hongzhuang was so outstanding that it made people envious. In the past, Xiao Shou had been crowned as the Saint of the Light for so many years. Everyone had thought that she was just lucky. Her true strength had never been as outstanding as the Saint of the Light. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang became the Saint of the Light, what everyone cared about the most was not the title, but herself. This was because her brilliance was already more dazzling than the title of Saint of the Light. It is understandable that Bailey Hongzhuang is like this, but why is Di Beichun doing the same? The man's lips twitched. Di Beichun was not an alchemist, nor was he of the light attribute. However, he was not any slower than Bailey Hongzhuang when it came to collecting blood spirit stones. Usually, people would be lucky if they could find 1 blood spirit stone in an area that was 10 meters wide. Di Beichun was not like that at all. He dug here and there. Every time he dug, he would find a blood spirit stone. When he was lucky, he would even find several blood spirit stones at once. This cannot be all luck, right? This. The woman was stunned. She did not know how to explain the situation. Look at those two. The man pointed at Bali Yin Che and Ling who were not far away. He had first noticed them because of their outstanding appearance. Later, he had been paying attention to them because of their speed. Fortunately, other than these 4 people, everyone else's performance was very normal. This made them believe that it wasn't that they were too weak, but that their spiritual power was ridiculously strong. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others are people who can't be judged by common sense. Look at Murong Jing, Chu Yingming, and the others. Aren't they similar? Just think of it that way. You'll feel better. Murong Jing, Chu Yingming. After the first cultivator started to rest due to the lack of mental strength, the other cultivators also started to rest due to the exhaustion of their mental strength. After exhausting their mental strength, everyone's faces were no longer as spirited as before. Exhaustion was written all over their faces. Normally, he wouldn't feel this uncomfortable even if his elemental energy was depleted. However, after his mental energy was depleted, it was as if he hadn't rested for a long time. His head hurt, as if it was being pricked by needles. Everyone was not used to this feeling. They all sat down and rested with their hands on their heads. As her mental strength was gradually depleted, Bailey Hongzhuang also felt that her head was very uncomfortable. However, she knew that she had to completely squeeze out all of her mental strength. Only then could her mental strength increase. One by one, the blood spirit stones were taken out, and Bailey Hongzhuang placed them in the primordial chaos ring. These things were very helpful for increasing their strength. Chapter 58:37. Even if they were doing this for the sake of strengthening their strength in the future, they couldn't fall too far behind when so many people had already broken through. Sigh, I can't do it anymore. Jiang Wenyin waved his hand and sat down limply. This feeling of powerlessness was too unbearable. Murong Jing looked at Jiang Wenyin and said with a smile, I can't do it anymore either. However, look at Di Beichun and the rest. With this comparison, you can see where the gap is. At this moment, apart from Di Beichun's group of 4, only Chen Feng was still practicing. This proved that not only were they stronger than ordinary people, even their spiritual energy was stronger. Haha, I used to call myself a genius. Now that I compare them, I realize that I'm not. Jiang Wenyin shook his head and sighed. He was also a first-rate genius in the Jiang family. All these years, in order to live up to his position as the young master, he had never slacked off in his cultivation. However, when facing Di Beichen and the rest, the pride in his heart disappeared. Perhaps if it were someone else, he would also feel jealous. However, when facing Di Beichen, he only felt admiration. He knew that Di Beichen and the rest must have been extremely hard-working in their cultivation. That breathtaking sword, that terrifying sword chi, he had never seen anything like it, even in the hands of his elders. He believed that such a sword could only be used after thousands of tempering. For Di Beichen to be able to master it at such a young age, the amount of time and energy he had spent must be terrifying. If Di Beichen knew what Jiang Wenyin was thinking, he would definitely shake his head. In the past few days, they did nothing but practice their sword during the day. However, compared to Zhongli Mu, his sword was nothing. Whether it was sword chi or power, it was far inferior. Only after seeing Zhongli Mu's sword would they understand what true sword chi was. Chen Feng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 and couldn't help but smile. My master once said that my spiritual energy is different from ordinary people, much stronger than cultivators of the same level. Now, it seems like your spiritual energy is even more terrifying. Birds of a feather flocked together. Di Beichen raised his eyebrows, and his lips curled into a devilish smile. Chun Feng blanked before a bright smile appeared on his face. That's right. Birds of a feather flocked together. After a while, even they couldn't hold on any longer. After exhausting the last of her mental strength, Bailey Hongzhuang's face turned pale, and she felt extremely uncomfortable. She tried her best to control herself and sat down at the side. She closed her eyes and began to rest. The blood spirit stone was in her possession. As her cultivation increased, the benefits of the demon summoning scripture, a heaven-defying cultivation method, also became more apparent. Even if she was sleeping, the demon summoning scripture would still automatically circulate and increase her cultivation. Of course, this speed wasn't as fast as when he was cultivating, but it wasn't too slow either. In the long run, the effects would be quite significant. Moreover, he had the pure energy of the blood spirit stone beside him. Bailey Hongzhuang's small action attracted the attention of several people. They were somewhat stunned, not understanding what Bailey Hongzhuang was doing. Only people familiar with Di Beichen's group knew that Di Beichen's situation was somewhat similar to Bailey Hongzhuang's. After transforming into a heavenly physique, he was blessed by the heavens in terms of cultivation. Chapter 58:38. The recovery of mental energy was very slow. After completely exhausting it the first time, it took everyone a few days to recover. After recovering, everyone looked at the ground in front of them and couldn't help but feel helpless. The amount of time spent was simply too shocking. Every time they obtained a few blood spirit stones, it would take so long. It would delay their cultivation too much. Why don't we try to directly dig up this piece of land? The leader of one of the sects suggested. He didn't care about training his mental energy at all. He only wanted to obtain blood spirit stones. I think that's a good idea. Even if we dig up the entire piece of land, it'll take less time than using mental energy to search. That's right, let's do that. The feeling of exhausting their mental energy was too painful. Everyone instinctively didn't want to try it again. Looking at the eager crowd, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others remained silent. Jiang Wenyin stood up and suggested, "If you want to dig, that's fine. I think you should go dig over there. We'll continue to increase our mental energy here. What do you think?" Hearing this, the people from the sects thought for a moment before nodding in agreement. Chu Yingming was originally a bit tempted by their suggestion, but seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others weren't moved, he gave up on the idea. For some reason, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others seemed to have a better understanding of the situation here. Since they didn't do it, they must have their reasons. Instinctively, he chose not to do it. These guys still don't understand. Didn't we try to dig up before? It's completely useless. It's a waste of time. Bali Yin Che raised his eyebrows. This place was clearly used to increase mental energy. It was impossible to take advantage of it. Ling, Er's expression was indifferent as she lazily glanced over. They'll understand this very soon. Don't worry about it so much. Let's continue. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. This was a rare opportunity, so she had to grasp it. In fact, even she felt that the recovery of mental strength was too slow. It was no wonder that most cultivators would not cultivate their mental strength. The amount of time it took was terrifying. If it weren't for the fact that she cultivated the demon summoning scripture, which allowed her to increase her cultivation even when she was resting, she wouldn't have been able to endure spending so much time on increasing her mental strength and causing her cultivation to stagnate. For a time, everyone began to search for blood spirit stones again. On the other side, there were complaints everywhere. Why is there still nothing after digging for so long? This doesn't make sense. Normally, there would be a blood spirit stone in such a wide distance. The area they dug was very wide. Several teams of people worked together. They didn't dig down in one place, but dug as a whole. It didn't take long for them to dig out a huge hole in the ground. The strange thing was that they hadn't found a single blood spirit stone. This situation left everyone dumbfounded. Why is this happening? This is too strange. Could it be that there are no more blood spirit stones here? Seeing the other party's bewilderment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were very calm. This situation was within their expectations, because they had agreed to only touch that area. Even if they had some ideas, they could only helplessly give up. Chapter 58:39. This place is too strange. Previously, there wasn't even a single blood spirit stone here. Why are they appearing now? Although I don't know why. The situation is already very obvious. This is the only way to obtain the blood spirit stone. If you want to use other methods, it won't work. A deep sense of helplessness surfaced in everyone's hearts. They could only continue using this method to search. Compared to the others' vexation, Bailey Hongzhuang was completely immersed in the improvement of her spiritual energy. Even though this process was relatively slow, she could still clearly feel the improvement in her spiritual energy. During the process of searching for blood spirit stones, she found that the sensitivity of her spiritual energy had increased as well. If she had enough time, she would be willing to continue staying here. During this process, they encountered some other groups, and everyone joined the search. As time passed, even with the temptation of blood spirit stones, some cultivators could no longer hold themselves back and chose to leave. No one knew if there would be more harvest in other places, and the harvest here was too slow, and the process was more than a little torturous. After the first group left, there would be more cultivators leaving every few days. The groups came and went. Only Bailey Hongzhuang and the others remained resolutely here. 3 months later, they found that the number of blood spirit stones here had started to decrease, and the speed of searching was no longer as fast as before. Hongzhuang, let's leave this place as well. Di Beichun turned around, his gaze gentle. There aren't many blood spirit stones here anymore. We can go to other places to search. All right, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. She also felt that it was time to leave. During these 3 months, her spiritual energy had improved considerably. Since this training ground belonged to the immortal domain, she believed that she would be able to find similar places to cultivate after reaching the immortal domain. There was no need to rush. Jiang Wenyan and the others were also looking forward to leaving as soon as possible. This was a torturous process of improvement. None of them could enjoy it. Chen Feng, we are preparing to leave. What are your plans? Di Beichen asked. Chen Feng smiled. Since all of you are preparing to leave, it is only natural that we leave together. That way, it will be safer, right? His joking words caused everyone to laugh. An ordinary faction would not dare to provoke the Great Devil Sex group, so why would they need to worry about their safety? The group once again set foot on the road ahead. Their destination was naturally the other place indicated on the map. There was only a simple lightning symbol on the map and nothing else. Although none of them had the lightning attribute, this place was the closest place to them. Even if they wanted to go to other places, they would have to pass by here. Therefore, everyone made up their minds to take a look. For several days, no one saw any teams. They had stayed there for too long. Most of the teams had already left the area. On this day, they finally met a team, and it was a team that Deep Beichun was extremely familiar with. Star Stomp. Deep Beichun laughed. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was pleasantly surprised. I finally met you again. When they saw Deep Beichun and the others, they could not hide their surprise. Heavens, we finally meet again. Chapter 5840. Where have you been all this time? We couldn't find you anywhere. Lin Taxing's face revealed a rare look of annoyance. He really wanted to find Deep Beichun and the others as soon as possible, but he was worried that they would be in danger. Noticing that Lin Taxing's behavior was different from before, Deep Beichun's face became a little more solemn. He asked in a deep voice, "Did something happen?" Deep Beichun, Jun Lingshuan's strength has improved a lot compared to before. Most people are no match for him now. As far as I know, many people have died at his hands. Now everyone regards him as a killing machine and wants to stay as far away from him as possible. You saw Jun Lingshuan? Deep Beichun's expression changed. Lin Taxing shook his head. We didn't see him, but an acquaintance did. He told me that the teams of the Jun family and the Xiao family are now looking for us everywhere. Jun Lingshuan even threatened to kill all of us. So we've been very careful not to be found by them. We also want to tell you this news as soon as possible. It's strange. Even if Jun Lingshuan has broken through to the Radiant Moon realm, his strength can't be that strong. Lin Qianqian was a little puzzled. But according to the exact information we received, Jun Lingshuan's current strength can only be described as terrifying. That's not strange. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart sank. The situation they didn't want to see had happened. Not strange. Lin Taxing was stunned, and then he suddenly said, did he get an incredible inheritance at the bottom of the lake, so his cultivation improved? That's not the real Jun Lingshuan at all. Jun Lingshuan is dead. Now it's another soul living in his body. Bali Yin Che explained. How is that possible? Lin Taxing was stunned. If that's the case, why would he help the Jun family to deal with us? Perhaps after he took over Jun Lingshuan's body, he felt that he should do something for Jun Lingshuan. Or perhaps it's because we know his secret. Of course, it's also possible that he's an arbitrary person, so he does whatever he wants. Bailey Hongzhuang voiced her conjecture. Just like when she took over Bailey Hongzhuang's body, she wanted to help Bailey Hongzhuang take back everything that belonged to her. Of course, her time travel happened when the original owner of the body had already died, and the Qing Devil had cruelly taken over her body. He didn't think that Qing Devil would be so kind as to help Jun Lingshuan, but the only thing he was sure of was that Qing Devil didn't like their existence. By the way, how is Xiao Soa doing? Is she still alive? Deep Beichun suddenly asked. Xiao Soa was also a key figure. If Xiao Soa was still alive, as long as she pointed out everything, everyone would know that the Qing Devil wasn't the real Jun Lingshuan. Otherwise, the Qing Devil had erased Jun Lingshuan's soul and taken over his memory. As long as he wanted to disguise himself, it would be very difficult for them to expose him. She's still alive, and she and Jun Lingshuan seem to be very close, just like before. Lin Qianqian frowned. Are you sure you're not mistaken? If Jun Lingshuan isn't the real him, why is Xiao Soa still with him? Hearing this news, Bailey Hongzhuang and others were all stunned, and their eyes were full of disbelief. They're together, and they're very close? Bali Yin Che was stunned. How is that possible? Chapter 5841. Although I didn't see it with my own eyes, I met a few friends who reminded me to be careful. They all told me this. I couldn't see anything unusual between Jun Lingshuan and Xiao Soa at all. Lin Taxing looked certain. It was because of this that he felt particularly strange. Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun looked at each other, and a terrible conjecture suddenly came to their minds. If that's the case, Xiao Soa is too terrible. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. As a woman, she really couldn't accept such a thing. It's not impossible. Deep Beichun was relatively indifferent. Xiao Soa's hatred for us has become an obsession. Since Qing Devil is stronger, it's not a bad thing for her. After hearing their conversation, the people around also understood their conjecture. Suddenly, their hearts thumped. When they saw that Xiao Shou didn't come out, they had always thought that Xiao Shou should have died. Who would have thought that Xiao Shou didn't care whether it was Jun Lingxuan or not? Perhaps for her, as long as it was an excellent man, it was enough. Doesn't this woman have any feelings? Bali Yin-che was speechless. No wonder she changed her mind so quickly. Xiao Shou was also very obsessed with Di Beichun when she first met him. However, not long after she was rejected by Di Beichun, she fell in love with Jun Lingxuan. When I saw Xiao Shou's sincere love for Jun Lingxuan, I thought it was true. Now it seems that I was too naive. This woman is really cold and heartless. For herself, she can even accept the person who killed her fiancé. Linger's eyes were filled with disgust. Even if others couldn't tell that Jun Lingxuan was faking it, Xiao Shou definitely knew. With Xiao Shou helping him hide the truth, I'm afraid everyone is convinced that he's the real Jun Lingxuan. Jiang Wenyan had a complicated look on his face. Qing Devil is already hard to deal with. With the help of the Jun family and the Xiao family, I think we really need to get everyone together as soon as possible. It'll be very dangerous if we get caught alone. Di Beichun nodded slightly. No matter what, they had basically reunited now. However, Di Xiaofeng and Mo Yunjue hadn't met yet. Star Stomper, do you have any news about Big Brother in Yinju? I've heard about Xiaofeng before. It's said that he and the Bailey family's practitioners are in another direction, which is quite far from here. I originally wanted to look for them, but you know that the ancient battlefield is so big that I can't even distinguish between my own location and north. I also don't know where to look for them. Lin Taxing's expression was full of helplessness. Apart from the fact that the elemental energy here was abundant and suitable for cultivation, they were basically running around like headless flies. They didn't know what to do at all. In fact, it's useless even if someone tells us the general direction. Xiao Feng and the others can't stay in one place. We may not be able to find them when we go there. Lin Qianqian spread out her hands. In fact, they had already tried to go in that direction before, but to no avail. Di Beichun looked thoughtful. Then he said, "In that case, let's continue in the original direction. Big Brother is very smart. He should have heard about Jun Lingxuan and made his own plans." Chapter 5842. Maybe they had already met him on the way. Okay. Lin Taxing nodded. At this moment, after meeting up with Di Beichun and others, he felt a little more at ease. Everyone moved forward, but they couldn't help but feel pressured. The Qing Devil was their mortal enemy. If there is really no way, we can only ask Granny Hua for her opinion. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was slightly gloomy. Even if she knew that Granny Hua would not intervene, she felt that she could ask for Granny Hua's opinion. Vaguely, she felt that the immortal area should also have rules. Just as the cultivators in the upper realm could not easily go to the lower realm, the cultivators in the immortal area should not go to the upper realm at will. Looking at the worry on the beautiful face, Di Beichun held Bailey Hongzhuang with his big hand. We will cross that bridge when we come to it. Moreover, the Qing Devil's strength is limited by Jun Lingxuan's physical body. It is impossible for the Qing Devil's strength to quickly recover to the past. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. This was already a blessing in disguise. He wondered what were their chances of winning against the Azure Fiend now. The group walked in the direction of the Thunderbolt marked on the map. The two places marked in front had good gains. I wonder if there will be gains in the third place. Have you heard any news about Xiren and Yingying? Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Lin Yi with a trace of doubt on her beautiful face. Lin Yi shook her head. We haven't heard from them since they disappeared from the pavilion in the middle of the lake. I think they should still be in the inheritance of the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Some inheritances take a long time. I don't think they will come out for a while. Lin Qianqian also said, "This ancient battlefield looks very amazing, but after coming in, I found that the inheritances here are really pitiful. Yingying and the others are really lucky to find inheritances here." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. She believed that everyone would find an opportunity suitable for them. Even if they didn't find it here, they would always encounter it somewhere else. When Xiren and Shengwan Yingying were also people with luck. At least they had gained quite a lot from their two adventures. Beichin, where are you going? Lin Taxing was also a little curious when he saw Di Beichin and his party heading in a certain direction. We plan to go to another place where we may gain something. Di Beichin smiled and handed the map to Lin Tang. You'll know when you see it. When Lin Taxing saw the map clearly, he could not help but be stunned. You actually have a map? When Yin found it, Di Beichin said with a smile. I really should have met up with you guys earlier. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had to wander around like a headless fly. Up until now, I have gained almost nothing. I might as well just stay in one place and cultivate. What a waste of time. The eyes of the cultivators from the Lin and Di families flashed with excitement when they learned about the map. Their journey here was just as Lin Taxing had said, a waste of time. After several days of traveling, everyone was getting closer and closer to the marked place. This place seems to be getting more and more remote. There are fewer and fewer plants around. It's really strange. Chapter 58:43. Looking at the changing environment, everyone could not help but feel puzzled. This situation was really strange. They had been to so many places, but had never seen such a unique environment. The lightning attribute in the air here has indeed increased. A cultivator with a lightning attribute in the group said. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other. It seemed that his guess was right. So, this should be a blessed land for cultivators with a lightning attribute. Bailey Yin Che's eyes narrowed, and his lips curled into a faint smile. The lightning attribute is also a very powerful attribute. Among the many attributes, the lightning attribute was the most powerful. However, there were also very few cultivators who had awakened the lightning attribute. Of course, there was no lack of lightning attribute cultivators in the group. After hearing this news, a look of anticipation appeared on their faces at the same time. Yinju is also lightning attribute. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but think of the man who was as cold as ice and as proud as an eagle. He was also a lightning attribute cultivator. If he was here, he might be able to reap a great harvest. Speaking of which, it's strange. Why hasn't there been any news of Yunju for so long? Bailey Yin Che frowned. Mo Yunjue was usually with them. In addition to his extraordinary strength, many cultivators knew of his existence. Moreover, he himself was an unforgettable man. If someone met him, they would definitely recognize him. However, there was no news about him so far. This in itself was very strange. Putting aside the doubts in their hearts, everyone noticed that the further they went, the more the surrounding trees disappeared. Even the ground seemed to be filled with electric sparks. The lightning attribute here is so terrifying. Lin Qianqian was shocked as she looked at the lightning that struck from the sky. Even though she was not a lightning attribute cultivator, she could feel how abundant the lightning attribute power here was. Look ahead. Di Beichin looked ahead and reminded everyone. Hearing this, everyone turned their eyes and saw that in front of them, bolts of lightning were constantly appearing and striking down from the sky. Even though there was still some distance between them, everyone couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts when they saw the dazzling tears that contained terrifying power. If I'm not wrong, that should be a thunder lake, Di Beichin said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded lightly. In a place with such dense thunder and lightning, other than Lei Zhe, there was no other place. The Thunder Lake is a very good place for cultivators of the thunder attribute to cultivate. If one's body can withstand the power of the thunder attribute and absorb the power of the thunder attribute into one's body, then one's thunder attribute will continue to grow. Not only that, lightning is extremely strong. If you use lightning to temper your body, the strength of your body will reach an extremely terrifying level. Ling Er's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. She had always admired powerful lightning attribute cultivators. Lin Yi and others couldn't help but glance at Ling Er. They only felt that Ling Er was quite proficient in this attribute power. Once a lightning attributed cultivator cultivates, their strength will increase tremendously. However, this cultivation process is also very painful. It's not something ordinary people can endure. Indeed, Bailey Hongzhuang agreed. Just thinking about lightning tempering the body was not something ordinary people could bear. Chapter 58:44. As long as we can increase our cultivation, this is nothing. It's just that it's very difficult to find a suitable thunder lock for cultivation. A cultivator from the D family expressed his thoughts with determination. He was not afraid of pain or danger. As long as the result was good, he was not afraid at all, no matter how difficult the process was. D. Bachan's lips curled into a faint smile. His dark blue eyes were filled with admiration. If this is really a suitable thunder lock for cultivation, you can seize the opportunity to cultivate here. Yes, young master. The man nodded happily. Not long after, the group finally arrived at the thunder lock. In their line of sight, everything around them was dark purple. The sky was covered by dark clouds. The dark purple clouds were oppressive and heavy, causing everything around them to be slightly dark. Only the streaks of lightning illuminated everything. The entire thunder lock was filled with densely packed lightning. It was only at this moment that the group realized how terrifying the thunder lock was. However, a black figure stood proudly in the middle of the terrifying lightning lake. His ink-black hair was like a waterfall. His silky black hair fluttered in the wind. His tall figure was strong and powerful. Even if it was just his back view, it was enough to amaze everyone. Bolts of lightning struck his body and entered his body, but that figure still stood there, not moving in the slightest. The wind blew and his clothes fluttered. In this dark world, he was like the thunder god who had descended to the world. The group could not help but hold their breaths. Looking at the figure, they were shocked. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the familiar figure. At first glance, she recognized that this was Mo Yunjue, whom they had been searching for. Yunjue, Bailey Hongzhuang called out softly. Hearing this familiar figure, the handsome figure slowly turned around, revealing a familiar and incomparably handsome face. The moment he saw Bailey Hongzhuang, a gentle smile appeared on the man's cold and handsome face. In the next moment, he flashed out of the thunder lock and stood in front of the group. Hongzhuang, you're here. We've been looking for you, but we couldn't find any trace of you. Now, we've finally found you. Bailey Hongzhuang heaved a sigh of relief. Previously, they had not been able to find Mo Yunjue, and they were still a little worried that something might have happened. Now it seemed that Yunju had been cultivating very well here. After talking with Mo Yunjue for a while, everyone came to a realization. It turned out that Mo Yunjue had come to a place not far from the Thunder Lock after entering the ancient battlefield. As a cultivator of the Thunder attribute, he could acutely feel the power of the Thunder attribute here. It was rare to find such a suitable place for cultivation, so he might as well stay here and cultivate in peace. So that's how it is. This place is so remote. No one has heard of you. Deep Beichun understood. If they didn't have a map, they probably wouldn't have come here by accident. However, Mo Yunjue had come to this area when he had just entered the ancient battlefield. It could be seen that his luck was extremely good. Yunjue, has your body become much stronger after being tempered by thunder and lightning? Ling is suddenly asked. Mo Yunjue nodded. Thunder and lightning can indeed temper the body. After staying here for so long, my body's strength has increased a lot. Ordinary weapons can no longer hurt me. Chapter 58:45. When the crowd heard that Mo Yunjue's body had been tempered to such an extent, they were secretly envious of him. Since ordinary weapons could no longer hurt him, it meant that his defense and combat power had increased as well. Generally speaking, the destructive power of a lightning attribute cultivator was already extremely strong. Coupled with their terrifying defense, if cultivators of the same level did not have any ability, they would not be a match for them. The lightning attribute cultivators were originally eager to seize this opportunity. However, when they saw the terrifying strength of the lightning lock, they could not help but have doubts in their hearts. Could they really withstand it? If they could not withstand it, a terrifying bolt of lightning would strike them, and they would not be able to withstand it. Mo Yunjue saw through their thoughts and immediately said, I have stayed in the lightning lock for so long and found that there will not be thick lightning near the edge. Although you will have to suffer some pain, you should be able to withstand it. Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, the cultivator's eyes lit up and a trace of excitement flashed in their eyes. "Thank you, young Master Mo. In fact, apart from lightning attribute cultivators, cultivators of other attributes can also use lightning to temper their bodies. However, unlike lightning attribute cultivators who can directly absorb the power of lightning, it will be more painful. However, if you can master it, it will be very helpful," Linguer said again. Lin Ta-Xing was immediately interested. "Then I will give a try." After carefully sensing the defensive power of Mo Yunjua's body just now, he was really envious. If he could reach such a level, he would have a huge advantage against cultivators of the same level. "I will give it a try too," Lin Qianqian said with a smile. With Lin Ta-Xing and Lin Ta-Xing taking the lead, a lot of cultivators became interested and entered the lightning lock one after another. Chen Feng would naturally not let go of such an opportunity. He had never cared about enduring pain. Just like when he was on the deck, as long as he could improve, everything else did not matter. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were not in a hurry to enter the Thunder Lake. Instead, they sat on the ground and chatted with Mo Yunjue. "Yinju, you seen it broken through to the Radiant Moon realm?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked with raised brows. Mo Yunjue nodded slightly. "I unconsciously broke through in this lightning lake. The lightning lake is very rich in energy, and my lightning attribute is much stronger than before. Then your combat power should be very strong now." Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Beichun. After breaking through to the Radiant Moon realm, there would be a huge increase in his cultivation. Mo Yunjue noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's expressions were different from usual. His gaze became complicated. What happened? Di Beichun told him about the Qing Devil, and Mo Yunjue finally understood. "I didn't expect so many things to happen during this period of time. The appearance of this Qing Devil is indeed a big problem. So we are also thinking about how to defeat him. This lightning lake is a good place to cultivate. Shall we stay here for the time being?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Although defense was not combat power, it was still very useful. Most importantly, this place was relatively hidden and would not be easily discovered. After all of them broke through to the Radiant Moon realm, their combat power would be greatly increased. Chapter 5846. As the group of cultivators walked into the Thunder Lake, they finally felt the terror of the lightning. As soon as the lightning entered their bodies, they felt as if they were hit hard. The power of the lightning was extremely strong. While the terrifying power tempered the body, it also destroyed the meridians in the body at the same time. The only way was to endure the pain, stabilize the mind, and control the power of the lightning to act on the body. Once it was out of control, the destructive power of the lightning would be shocking. Therefore, everyone needed to find the lightning they could withstand according to their own strength. The process seemed simple, but it was extremely dangerous. The slightest mistake could cost one's life. When everyone found that it was difficult to even stay at the edge of the Thunder Lake, they were terrified when they thought about how Mo Yunjue had the guts to stand in the middle of the Thunder Lake. For a few months, Mo Yunjue had been staying here and being struck by lightning. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed a petite and agile figure in the Thunder Lake. Her eyes lit up. The dark magic fox is also in the Thunder Lake. Mo Yunjue glanced at the black little guy and smiled faintly. "When I enter the Thunder Lake to cultivate, it entered with me." Interestingly enough, after being baptized by the lightning, its body also carried the lightning attribute. Now, it has gotten used to the Thunder Lake's environment. During this period, its strength has increased at an amazing speed. Mo Yunjue's contract with the Dark Magic Fox was shorter than everyone else, so the Dark Magic Fox's cultivation was slightly lower than Xiao Xuanzi's. However, it had absorbed a lot of energy in the Thunder Lake and broke through to the Nebula Realm. So, this Dark Magic Fox can also transform into a human? Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. She didn't know if the contract beast personality was similar to its master, but the Dark Magic Fox's style was exactly the same as Mo Yunjue's. Usually, even when it appeared in front of everyone, it had a lazy and arrogant look. Most of the time, it cultivated in the beast pet space and didn't like to talk at all. Mo Yunjue nodded slightly. It should be possible, but it hasn't transformed into a human yet. Why? Bailey Hongzhuang raises her eyebrows. Do contract beasts nowadays have such personalities? Xiao Xuanzi was obviously able to transform into a human form, but he was unwilling to reveal it. Of course, they also knew that this was because the human form after transforming was different from Xiao Xuanzi's imagination. Could it be that the dark magic fox was the same? I've asked it. It said that it's fine the way it is now. It's too lazy to change. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. It seemed that their judgment was right. In the past, they had always felt that the dark magic raccoon was not only cold, but also lazy. Normally, it would not want to interact with them at all. Even when it saw them, it would just give them a lazy look as a greeting. But now, he couldn't even be bothered to transform into his human form. Noticing the expressions of the two, Mo Yunjue smiled faintly. Actually, it's fine the way it is. It's convenient to bring it around. Otherwise, if two big men stay together all the time, I won't be used to it. What you said makes some sense. Bali Yin-che chuckled. When two icebergs were together, the temperature was really low. Don't talk nonsense. Do you plan to stay here? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bali Yin-che. Now, almost everyone had gone in, but Bali Yin-che and Ling were still here. Chapter 58-47. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly as her beautiful face became even more radiant. I forgot that you are a demonic beast, and your physical body is extremely strong. In terms of physical strength, demonic beasts had always had an advantage over humans. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun also walked towards the lightning lake. The lightning lake was huge, but there were still quite a number of people in the few teams. At this moment, everyone was gathered at the edge of the lightning lake. Of course, to absorb the lightning, everyone was separated by a certain distance. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun chose a spot, they began to try using the lightning to refine their physical bodies. Thinking back to the time when they went to the Immortal Cloud's secret realm, after the training on the deck, their physical strength had increased and was much stronger than before. If they were to be refined by the lightning, it would be even better. Kacha! A bolt of lightning suddenly struck down. Bailey Hongzhuang did not recklessly come into contact with the lightning. There was a lot of lightning in the lightning lake, and she had to find a lightning that she could withstand when she first started cultivating. Looking at the tiny bolt of lightning that fell from the sky, Bailey Hongzhuang did not dodge and allowed the lightning to strike her body. The moment the lightning entered her body, Bailey Hongzhuang's body trembled and a series of electric arcs flashed in her body, bringing with it a dazzling light. She felt a numbing sensation in her body. That was the effect of the lightning. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately used the demon summoning scripture. She could not let the lightning damage her body because she was not a lightning-type cultivator and could not absorb such power. Hence, the only thing she could do was to guide the lightning to refine her skin. Everyone had to be careful when facing the lightning. If they were not careful, they could lose their lives. Of course, during this process, there were also cultivators who were accidentally struck by the stronger lightning and fell unconscious. When the surrounding cultivators noticed this, they immediately carried him out of the lightning lake while the lightning-type cultivators tried to absorb the lightning energy in his body. Most of the time, the lightning in the Thunderlock was regular, but occasionally there would be a thick bolt of lightning at the edge. Although everyone felt helpless, they could only be cautious. If he was struck by lightning that he couldn't withstand, he might even die. Bailey Hongzhuang used the demon summoning scripture to summon the power of thunder and lightning. Sparks would occasionally appear on the surface of her body. Her delicate face was a little pale. She closed her eyes and immersed herself in cultivation. Lightning body tempering was not a process that could be completed in a short period of time. Mo Yunjue had stayed in the lightning lake for a long time. During this time, he had adapted to the intensity of the lightning. Therefore, even though he was standing in the middle of the lightning lake, he was not afraid. It was only when the crowd saw the terrifying lightning strike his body that their hearts trembled. Time gradually passed. Other than the first few days when everyone was excitedly guiding the lightning to temper their bodies, as the pain continued to deepen, coupled with the fact that they could lose their lives at any time, some cultivators gradually chose to give up. Everyone had a cultivation method that was suitable for them. It was just that they chose different cultivation methods. Natural selection, survival of the fittest. Chapter 58:48. Bai Yin She and Ling Er also entered the Thunder Lake. When the crowd saw that the two of them did not choose to stand at the edge, but chose to enter the center of the Thunder Lake, they all widened their eyes in shock and suspicion. Do the two of them not want to live anymore? They actually chose to stand at the center of the Thunder Lake. Aren't they afraid of losing their lives? I don't know. Maybe they also have the Thunder attribute. Even if they have the Thunder attribute, it is impossible for them to enter the center of the Thunder Lake as soon as they arrived. They are really bold. While the crowd was guessing, Bai Yin She and Ling Er used their actions to show everyone what it meant to be strong. The thunder and lightning fell on the two of them mercilessly. However, the two of them just closed their eyes calmly. The two of them did not even show the slightest hint of pain in the face of the thick and terrifying thunder and lightning. It was as if the thunder and lightning did not fall on them. Seeing this, the crowd completely gave up their previous plan. It seemed that their judgment was wrong. Their physical strength was really terrifying. The sun was shining brightly, and the sky was clear, and the clouds were beautiful. Qing Devil looked at the endless forest in front of him and frowned. These guys are really good at running. I still can't find them after such a long time. It was an accident that Di Beichun and the others escaped. He did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would see through the illusion at this critical moment. In his haste, there was no way for him to stop all of them. In addition, the illusion was condensed from the blood in his heart. When the illusion was broken, his soul was inevitably injured. Fortunately, Jun Lingxuan came to him. After devouring Jun Lingxuan's soul, his soul power was replenished. The biggest problem now was that Jun Lingxuan's physical strength was limited. He could not really use his full strength. As long as they are still on the ancient battlefield, we can find them, Xiao Shou said with a smile. During these days, she followed Qing Devil and watched him lead the family team to kill all the enemies. His invincible appearance really made her admire him. This kind of man was the kind of man Xiao Shou liked. He had extremely powerful means, a decisive character, and an arrogant and domineering aura. She could only reach the peak of her life if she was with such a man, even though she knew that the person in front of her was Qing Devil and not Jun Lingxuan. So what? Everyone thought that he was her fiancé, Jun Lingxuan. In addition, Qing Devil also planned to live as Jun Lingxuan. For her, nothing had changed. Azure Fiend glanced at Xiao Shou indifferently with a cold expression. Do you know where they will appear? I don't know. Xiao Shou shook her head. This area is too big. They might have turned back. She was also very helpless about this. Since he knew that Qing Devil was willing to help him kill Bailey Hongzhuang and her companions, he couldn't wait to find Bailey Hongzhuang and her companions as soon as possible. He couldn't do anything to them before. Now he could finally deal with them. However, these people seemed to have disappeared into thin air. There was no trace of them until now. Qing Devil turned his eyes and looked not far away. His eyes were malicious and cold-blooded. As long as I catch them, they will definitely die. How dare they take my things? How dare they? Chapter 58:49. Xiao Shou was a little confused. She had never heard Qing Devil mention this before. In the dreamland, she didn't notice that Bailey Hongzhuang and her companions had taken anything away. However, since the Azure Demon valued it so much, it must be very impressive. Qing Devil's face darkened. He clenched his fists and said, "It's that woman, Bailey Hongzhuang?" Xiao Shou was surprised. She only knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had been looking for a way out, but she didn't know what she had taken away at that time. Yes, it's Bailey Hongzhuang. Qing Devil raised the corners of his mouth into a playful smile. She's a smart and interesting woman. The dreamland that he was so proud of was broken by a cultivator at the Nebula Realm. In his opinion, it was impossible. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did it. Even a cultivator with a higher cultivation couldn't come out of the multi-layered dreamland. However, such a beautiful and intelligent woman did it. It was really interesting. As Qing Devil finished his words, Xiao Sou's heart skipped a beat. Whether it was his words full of interest or his playful smile, they all revealed one message. Qing Devil was interested in Bailey Hongzhuang. She had seen this expression many times since she was a child. No matter what the reason was, when men and women were interested in each other, they would like each other in the end. She always thought that Qing Devil hated Bailey Hongzhuang. She thought that after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, Qing Devil would kill her mercilessly to avenge himself. However, she hesitated at this moment. Maybe the situation would be completely different from what she expected after Bailey Hongzhuang appeared. Bailey Hongzhuang, Xiao Sou gritted her teeth. Was Bailey Hongzhuang really that much stronger than her? Why did even Qing Devil treat Bailey Hongzhuang differently? Bailey Hongzhuang, who was immersed in her cultivation, did not know that Xiao Sou was currently gnashing her teeth at her. At this moment, she only wanted to cultivate properly to improve her own cultivation. The process of lightning body tempering not only increased the strength of one's body, it also helped one's cultivation to a certain extent. Because during this process, she discovered that lightning could actually temper origin power as well. Her elemental energy had always been relatively pure and condensed, but every time the lightning passed by, her elemental energy would become even purer. Previously, she was already on the verge of breaking through, but the lightning forcefully suppressed it for her. I think we've really come to the right place. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. Normally, it was not easy to find such a suitable place to cultivate. Xiaohei, who was at the side, nodded while trembling. Every time the lightning entered its body, its white fur would stand up like a hedgehog, turning it into an exploding fur ball. Vaguely, it felt that it had more fur than before. After the explosion, its fluffy fur covered its eyes so much that it could not even see clearly. Master, do you think it's time for me to fix my fur? Xiaohei brushed the fur in front of its eyes and finally saw its master's appearance clearly. Chapter 5850. Master, are you telling me the truth? Xiaohei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's smiling eyes. Why was it so suspicious? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, the corners of her eyes smiling. What I said is naturally true. In any case, you're always so angry. This kind of image is your true nature. Master, after understanding Bailey Hongzhuang's real intention, Xiaohei pouted with a gloomy expression. Ha, good girl. On the other side of the ancient battlefield, Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Yunyan led the Bailey family's team forward. Looking at the empty environment, everyone felt helpless. We've been out of the inheritance for a while and met other teams, but we haven't seen Bei Qin and Ta Xing. Did we go in the wrong direction? Di Xiaofeng looked around. Even though the ancient battlefield was huge, after a few months, everyone had basically gathered. However, they still hadn't met anyone from their side. Bailey Yunyan bit her lips in distress. I don't think so. I heard that Bei Qin and the rest are safe. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be a problem to go in this direction. Forget it. It's fine as long as everyone is safe. The most important thing is that Jun Lingxuan is looking for Bei Qin after his strength increased. Emperor Xiaofeng had a worried look on his face. This was what worried him the most. Before entering the ancient battlefield, he promised his grandmother that he would take good care of Bei Qin. However, he hadn't even seen Bei Qin after entering for so long. I really don't know how Jun Lingxuan got lucky. Bailey Tianhing's face was gloomy. He was already completely suppressed, but Senior Shu Yu appeared and increased his strength. Di Xiaofeng fell into silence. Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou were getting more and more troublesome. Now that it had become so strong, if they did not suppress it as soon as possible, once it became so strong that they could not control it, it would become extremely terrible. Are you talking about me? A cold and mocking voice sounded, making people's hearts turn cold. Hearing this voice, Di Xiaofeng hurriedly turned his head and noticed that Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou's figures were slowly approaching, not far away. Speak of the devil. Di Xiaofeng's face darkened. He didn't want to see Jun Lingxuan. Since young, he and Jun Lingxuan had been fighting openly and secretly because of the conflicts between their families. It was just that they did not expect that after so many years of fighting, The most intense conflict will be transferred to Di Beichun. Di Xiaofeng, it seems that you haven't found Di Beichun yet. Qing Devil's eyes were filled with coldness, but she couldn't hide her disappointment. She thought that after finding Di Xiaofeng, she would be able to find Di Beichun and the others. However, from the current situation, it was obvious that Di Xiaofeng hadn't met up with Di Beichun and the others. What does it have to do with you? Di Xiaofeng looked disdainful. He had always been too lazy to talk nonsense with Jun Lingxuan. Di Xiaofeng, don't be too arrogant. Xiao Shou warned coldly. It was fine in the past, but the current Azure Demon strength was no match for Jun Lingxuan's. Di Xiaofeng was definitely not Qing Devil's opponent. Do I have to be polite to you? Bailey Yunyan said rudely. Chapter 58-51. Seeing that Bailey Yunyan dared to speak to her in such a tone, Xiao Shou couldn't control her anger. The Bailey family was undoubtedly an insignificant existence in her eyes. If Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't become the head of the Bailey family, no one would know about them. So what? Facing Xiao Shou's surging aura, Bailey Yunyan wasn't afraid at all. When Xiao Shou was the saint of light, she had always regarded others as nothing and never put them in her eyes. Bailey Yunyan was already used to it. Now, everything was different. Bailey Yunyan was a member of the Bailey family and was proud of her identity. Xiao Shou took a step forward and was about to teach Bailey Yunyan a lesson. However, the Qing Devil stopped her. Xiao Shou looked at the Qing Devil. She wanted to say something, but hesitated. The Qing Devil calmed her down with just a glance. Don't worry, there will be plenty of opportunities to do it. Looking at the man's deep eyes, Xiao Shou became as obedient as a kitten. In front of the Qing Devil, she deeply felt that she was insignificant. Only in front of him was she a little woman. Di Xiaofeng noticed the subtle movements between Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Shou and was a little surprised. Although he already knew that the two had a good relationship, Xiao Shou had never listened to Jun Lingxuan's words before. You really don't know where Di Beichun is? Do you have any way to contact him? Jun Lingxuan stared at Di Xiaofeng. The two were about the same height, but for some reason, everyone felt that Jun Lingxuan was looking down on them. If we could contact each other, we would have met long ago. Why would we wait until now? Looking at Jun Lingxuan, Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but have a strange feeling. For some reason, he felt that Jun Lingxuan was different from before. He couldn't tell exactly what was different, but he was certain that there was definitely something different. In that case, I have no choice but to kill you first, Qing Devil said coldly. If I can't find Di Beichun, I can only collect some interest. Di Beichun and Di Xiaofeng have a very good relationship. If Di Xiaofeng dies, it will be a big blow to him. Xiao Shou's eyes lit up. Whether it was Di Beichun or Di Xiaofeng, as long as they died, she would be able to vent her anger. What a vicious woman. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were cold. In the past, he and Xiao Shou had known each other for many years, and their relationship wasn't that bad. But now, he truly saw Xiao Shou's character. This woman was vicious to begin with. Hearing Di Xiaofeng's ruthless words, Xiao Shou looked a little embarrassed, but she quickly calmed down. So what? This day, next year, will be the day of your death. When Nangong Yuqing passed by, he saw the scene of Jun Lingxuan and Di Xiaofeng tit for tat, and his eyes flashed with a trace of interest. Di Beichun also said that Jun Lingxuan was possessed. I think he was talking nonsense. Thinking of this, he felt angry. When Di Beichun had told him this, he had believed it to be true. He had never thought that it would be false. However, Xiao Shou not only didn't die, but also stuck to him like this. Just based on this point, Jun Lingxuan couldn't possess him. Chapter 58-52. After hearing Nangong Yuqing's words, Xiao Shou's eyes flashed with a trace of nervousness. The reason why she wanted to kill Bailey Hongzhuang and the others was that only they knew that the Qing Devil had possessed Jun Lingxuan. She didn't want to expose this secret and only hoped that no one would know about it. Nangong Yuqing, did you just say that Jun Lingxuan was possessed? Nangong Yuqing's voice wasn't low, so Di Xiaofeng also heard it. This is what your brother said. I really didn't expect him to make up such a nonsense reason. When he thought about how he had believed it to be true and had even told so many people about it, he felt extremely embarrassed. He really did not understand how Di Beichun could be so shameless to tell him such a lie without blushing or skipping a beat. Nangong Yuqing's words seemed to have opened a door in Di Xiaofeng's heart. He had never been able to figure out what was wrong, but now he finally understood. Perhaps others thought that Jun Lingxuan was the real Jun Lingxuan, but he believed what Di Beichun said. Di Beichun definitely wouldn't make up such a thing. The only reason he said so was that it was all true. His enemy knew his enemy the best. He and Jun Lingxuan had been enemies for so many years, so he knew Jun Lingxuan's situation very well. Even if the person in front of him was very similar to Jun Lingxuan, there were always some differences. He believed that the person in front of him wasn't the real Jun Lingxuan. "You're not the real Jun Lingxuan, right?" Di Xiaofeng asked in a low voice. Although it was a question, he said it in a certain tone. "I don't know what nonsense you're talking about," Xiao So immediately retorted. "Di Beichun made up such a rumor before, but you also spread such a rumor. You really are brothers." However, seeing Xiao So's anxious look, Di Xiaofeng was even more certain. However, he didn't understand why Xiao So was protecting the possessed person. Logically speaking, this person should be her enemy. Don't say such nonsense to stall for time. Today, you will die without a doubt. Endless murderous aura erupted in an instant as Qing Devil mercilessly attacked Di Xiaofeng. He was also a smart guy. He felt that his disguise was already good enough. Of course, with his identity, he didn't need to try so hard to disguise himself. Even the June's people couldn't see any clues, but this guy actually found something wrong with one glance. He did not like these smart fellows. It would be troublesome to keep them alive, so it was better to use the simplest method to kill them. Seeing Jun Lingxuan attacking, Di Xiaofeng wasn't afraid at all. The surroundings' temperatures. Xiaofeng's, the devil's. But at this time, everyone was most shocked by Di Xiaofeng's strength, because they could clearly feel that Di Xiaofeng's third-level radiant moon. How is this possible? Xiao Sou's eyes widened. Her beautiful face was filled with astonishment. Before entering the ancient battlefield, she clearly noticed that Di Xiaofeng hadn't broken through to the radiant moon realm. It had only been a few months. How did Di Xiaofeng reach the radiant moon realm? Chapter 58-53. Originally, everyone thought that Chun Feng's cultivation level was the highest among all of them. However, unexpectedly, Di Xiaofeng had quietly broken through to the third stage of the radiant moon. Although Jun Lingxuan had displayed an astonishing strength recently, no one knew if he could defeat Di Xiaofeng, who was at the third stage of the radiant moon realm. With the eruption of the commotion, it immediately attracted the attention of the cultivators not far away. When they saw that the people confronting each other were Di Xiaofeng and Jun Lingxuan, they were not surprised at all. A few months ago, Jun Lingxuan had declared that he would find the cultivators of the Di family and the Lin family and kill them all. However, it was strange that Di Beichun's group seemed to have disappeared into thin air. After so long, they still hadn't appeared in front of everyone. Now, Jun Lingxuan had finally found Di Xiaofeng. This battle was unavoidable. Third stage of the radiant moon realm. Not bad. Qing Devil raised his eyebrows, and the killing intent in his eyes intensified. Although I don't know who you are, you must be very powerful to be able to stay in the ancient battlefield. Di Xiaofeng's expression was calm. It was clear that an expert who could possess Jun Lingxuan's body must have a terrifying spiritual power. This showed that this person was very powerful when he was alive. Therefore, even if his cultivation level was higher than his opponent's, he didn't dare to underestimate his opponent. A real expert, even if his cultivation level was limited, must have a terrifying combat power. Qing Devil narrowed his eyes. This guy in front of him was indeed a character. He had stayed in the ancient battlefield for so many days and met a lot of cultivators. However, this person in front of him was undoubtedly the most intelligent one. He didn't refute. At this time, the more he refuted, the more guilty he would seem. For him, the easiest way to solve this kind of problem was to kill. Ling Sun. Xiao Soa looked at Jun Lingxuan worriedly. Although she knew that Qing Devil's strength was not simple, there were still some small problems due to the fact that he had just fused with his body. As a result, his strength was still at the first stage of the Radiant Moon realm. If the Qing Devil couldn't deal with the gap between the two levels, wouldn't it be terrible? Qing Devil just gave Xiao Shou a look which was full of endless coldness and deterrence. She shut her mouth instantly and dared not say another word. The man in front of her was obviously ruthless to the extreme, but it was this kind of domineering and ruthless that particularly fascinated her. Do it. Qing Devil moved. Although her aura was weaker than Di Xiaofeng's, her momentum was not weaker at all. In fact, it was even more powerful. After sensing this, Di Xiaofeng was even more certain that the real Jun Lingxuan definitely didn't have such an aura. His pitch-black eyes flashed with a trace of graveness. The power of the fire attribute poured out, leaving him with no chance to retreat. Behind him was a group of cultivators from the Bailey family. Compared to the teams from the Jun and Xiao families, their numbers were simply too small. Just based on the other party's terrifying mental strength, it was unrealistic to want to escape, so the only thing they could do was to fight with their backs against the wall. Perhaps he would die here today, but he wasn't afraid. Bang! 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 The collision of the fire attribute and the metal attribute. Chapter 58-54. Nangong Yuqing's gaze was fixed on the two of them. He had long heard that Jun Lingxuan's strength had increased a lot recently. However, he had never seen Jun Lingxuan make a move. What he had heard were only rumors. Only after seeing the two of them fight did he realize that Jun Lingxuan's strength was much greater than what he had imagined. Even when facing Di Xiaofeng, who was a rank 3 Radiant Moon, he was still able to deal with him steadily. At this moment, Nangong Yuqing couldn't help but be absent-minded for a moment. Jun Lingxuan was actually similar to Di Beichun. This was because Di Beichun's ability to fight above his level was also very terrifying. Now, Jun Lingxuan was actually able to do the same. Over the years, Nangong Yuqing was very familiar with Jun Lingxuan. When he thought of what Di Xiaofeng had said, his mind was a little chaotic. He couldn't figure out who was telling the truth. After seeing that Di Xiaofeng's strength wasn't able to suppress Jun Lingxuan, Bailey Yunyan was a little worried. They had already seen how terrifying the experts of the ancient battlefield were. There were clearly so many treasures here, but no one dared to touch them. This was because as long as they touched them, their lives would be forfeit. This person was someone from the ancient battlefield. Just his methods alone were something they had never encountered before. At this moment, she suddenly noticed that Xiao Shou was about to join the battle with a sword in her hand. In the next moment, Bailey Yunyan also rushed in and blocked in front of Xiao Shou. Xiao Shou, you still want to sneak attack? Bailey Yunyan was as cold as ice. Because of her good relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang, she was filled with disgust for Xiao Shou. At this moment, when she saw that Xiao Shou was planning to use such a despicable method, the disgust in her heart became even stronger. Looking at Bailey Yunyan, who suddenly appeared in front of her, Xiao Shou was slightly startled. She expressionlessly mocked, "So what? Today I want to compete with you." Bailey Yunyan waved her sword and pointed it at Xiao Shou. "Huh." Xiao Shou sneered, her beautiful eyes filled with disgust and resentment. Woman who overestimates herself. Why don't you take a look at your own status? Do you think you're worthy? Xiao Shou, you're no longer the Radiant Saint, yet you still haven't put away that arrogant aura. Do you know why you can't compare to Hongzhuang? Just based on this point alone, you don't deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as her. Bailey Yunyan was also very eloquent. Her words were not polite at all. You. Xiao Shou's anger was immediately aroused. Who do you think you are? You're full of nonsense. Bailey Hongzhuang was the woman she hated the most in her life. In the past, she had never been afraid to compare herself with others, because no woman's halo could surpass hers. Until Bailey Hongzhuang appeared. Everything changed. What she hated the most now was being compared to Bailey Hongzhuang. It only proved her inadequacy time and time again. I'm speaking the truth. Bailey Yunyan coldly said. Hongzhuang is the one who really doesn't want to be compared to you. The difference between the two of you is like heaven and earth. Haven't you always looked down on me? Let's compete once. Don't think that you're so great just because you're the young lady of the Xiao family. Xiao Seiwu could only feel her blood rushing to her head. It was this kind of person that she didn't put in her eyes that actually dared to challenge her. Chapter 58-55. The battle between women was not inferior to that of men. The crowd could even feel that the murderous aura between Xiao Sou and Bailey Yunyan was even thicker. Both of them had attacked viciously with the sole intention of taking each other's lives. Initially, when the crowd saw that Bailey Yunyan had taken the initiative to challenge Xiao Sou, they had thought that she was digging her own grave. However, after the two had exchanged blows, they realized that Bailey Yunyan's powers had become so outstanding. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang had become the master of the Bailey family, Bailey Yunyan and the Di family had become very close. I never thought that her powers would increase by so much in such a short period of time. In the past, Bailey Yunyan may have been outstanding in the Bailey family, but she was not worthy of being in the limelight. Now, she can actually fight Xiao Sou to a standstill. This is incredible. Every dog has its day. If Xiao Sou were to be defeated by Bailey Yunyan, that would be a very interesting scene. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang had appeared, the crowd had felt that this battle between her and Xiao Sou would be very interesting. Now, the situation has escalated. Ding, ding, ding. The sharp swords clashed, and sparks flew in all directions. Xiao Sou heard the discussion from the crowd and felt like a sharp knife stabbing in her heart. A thick, surging, murderous aura almost condensed into a solid form. Her movements became even more ferocious, and her water-based powers exploded. This was a clash between water and fire. The moist water and the scorching heat of fire clashed together. The cultivators standing on both sides felt two completely different sensations. Bang! The air suddenly became moist, and a water dragon appeared out of thin air. It opened its bloody mouth and charged mercilessly towards Bailey Yunyan. Bailey Yunyan's eyes flashed with astonishment when she sensed the terrifying aura that was charging towards her. This was not a technique that an average cultivator would be able to pull off. However, she did not fall into a state of panic just because of this. The raging flames turned into fiery lotuses and shot toward Xiao Sou. With her current strength, she was still unable to conjure such a huge attack. This fire lotus was her most outstanding move. Xiao Sou's eyes flashed with disdain when she saw the beautiful fire lotuses. These fire lotuses were not enough to deal with her water dragon. Since she got together with Qing Devil had taught her some tricks. The water dragon was a new trick she had learned recently. So this was the true power of elemental power. In the next moment, Xiao Sou's eyes narrowed. She realized that Bailey Yunyan's fire lotus was not aimed at the water dragon, but at her. She hurriedly controlled the water dragon to block all of this, but she was shocked to find that the fire lotus was not extinguished after passing through the water dragon's body. It attacked her again. At the same time, the water dragon was getting closer and closer to Bailey Yunyan. However, Bailey Yunyan showed no signs of dodging. Damn it! Injuring the enemy by 1,000, but losing 800 of her own men. This woman was actually going all out. Bang! Boom! A loud sound rang out. The crowd watched as the water dragon charged towards Bailey Yunyan and sent her light yellow figure flying into the distance. A deep trench appeared on the ground, and Bailey Yunyan's figure was thrown 1,000 meters away. She was lying on the ground and could not be seen clearly. Chapter 58-56. Ah! A tragic wail suddenly sounded. Xiao Sou covered her face as if she had gone crazy. She never thought that the fire lotus would suddenly explode. It was so close to her that she didn't even have time to guard against it. At that moment, she only felt the extremely hot flame exploding near her face. The sparks directly splashed onto her face and body. If she was prepared, she could use her primary energy to form a layer of protection. But all of this happened too suddenly. She didn't expect Bailey Yunyan to have such an idea. The sharp scream attracted everyone's attention. Looking at this unexpected scene, everyone was a little shocked. Even the Azure Fiend and Di Xiaofeng, who were fighting each other, looked over. Di Xiaofeng stopped after seeing that Bailey Yunyan was injured. He quickly rushed to her side. Looking at the pale Bailey Yunyan on the ground, he quickly helped her up and held her in his arms. He asked with concern, "Yunyan, how are you?" Bailey Yunyan smiled and shook her head. "Xiaofeng, I'm fine." Although she was injured and the degree was not light, she was still alive. Di Xiaofeng quickly put the elixir in her mouth. "Why did you challenge Xiao Sou?" His voice was very strict, but Bailey Yunyan could hear a trace of gentleness deep in his voice. She smiled and said, "Xiaofeng, in fact, I've always been envious of Hong Zhuang. I've always envied her relationship with Bei Chen. Since I met you, you've always been protecting me and taking care of me. And I want to be like Hong Zhuang. She can fight side by side with Bei Chen instead of watching from the back. I know I may not be able to do that now, but I will." Her clear almond eyes were filled with strong determination. Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but be moved by her determination. His gaze became gentler. "I believe in you. You're both girls from the Bailey family. You're both equally outstanding." Bailey Yunyan smiled. Her delicate and gentle face was filled with joy and comfort. She remembered what Bailey Hongzhuang said to her when she was worried that she wasn't good enough for Di Xiaofeng. There was no such thing as unworthy. If he dared to like you, you would dare to be with him. If someone thinks that you are not worthy, then use your strength to tell them that you are worthy. You deserve her more than anyone else. She clearly remembered the shock she felt when Bailey Hongzhuang said those words. If everyone felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was unworthy, then when Bailey Hongzhuang first came to the upper realm, everyone thought that she was trying to climb up the social ladder. But she did it. Now, everyone thought that they were a match made in heaven. No one thought that they were not suitable for each other. Because of this, she believed that she could do it as well, and had been working hard for it. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were gentle. Previously, he had always felt that Bailey Yunyan had ulterior motives, but one day, she suddenly became open-minded. Only now did he realize that something like this had happened. Xiao Sou covered her face with her hands, and her whole person fell into madness. As a woman, how important was her appearance? She had never thought that something like this would happen one day. Qing Devil looked at Xiao Sou, who was screaming hysterically, and a trace of impatience flashed in his eyes. This woman's cultivation was clearly not weaker than Bailey Hongzhuang's, but she still fell into such a situation. She was really too stupid. Chapter 58-57. The cultivators of the Xiao family had already rushed to Xiao Sou's side. Xiao Sudong was even more nervous and worried. "Sister, how are you?" My face. Xiao Sou just kept repeating this sentence, from initial nervousness to the later despair and helplessness. As a woman, she absolutely couldn't lose her face. Otherwise, she would become a complete joke, and Qing Devil would not like her anymore. Xiao Sudong pulled Xiao Sou's hands away, only to see that her fair and smooth face was covered with blood, looking miserable and pitiful. "Sudong, how's my face?" Xiao Sou looked at Xiao Sudong nervously, as if she was looking at her last life-saving straw. Seeing Xiao Sou's nervous look, Xiao Sudong couldn't bear it. He knew very well that his sister had always cared about her face very much. "Sister, don't worry. These wounds will be cured soon." "Really?" Xiao Sou's hope was rekindled, and she quickly took out the healing medicine and took it. She had been injured before, and even her face was not spared when she was in danger. However, she had never felt such pain before, so she was inexplicably a little flustered. "Brother-in-law, you must avenge my sister." Xiao Sudong looked at Jun Lingxuan with indignation in his eyes. This woman is really vicious. The Azure Fiend didn't want to pay attention to Xiao Seiwu. How could he blame others for his own incompetence when he was in such a situation? Now listening to Xiao Sudong's words, he found a very good reason. Compared to facing the hysterical Xiao Sou, he would rather have a good fight with Di Xiaofeng. Di Xiaofeng noticed Qing Devil's gaze and immediately stepped forward to stand in front of Bailey Yunyan. "Our competition is not over yet." The corner of Azure Fiend's lips curled up, and there was a hint of danger in his smile. "Things between us aren't that simple. Unless you die, it won't end." His cold and gloomy words were full of killing intent. So far, Di Xiaofeng was the most powerful person he had met. However, he would still kill him. Looking at Di Xiaofeng's unstoppable momentum, everyone's eyes changed slightly. It seemed that after entering the ancient battlefield, Jun Lingxuan's momentum had become much stronger than before. At least in the past, Jun Lingxuan had never made people feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. Then give it a try. The result may not be as you wish. Di Xiaofeng's expression was calm. He didn't care who the other party was, but it wasn't that easy to take his life. Compared with Qing Devil's imposing manner, Di Xiaofeng might be slightly inferior. But when everyone saw his pair of eyes that were as tough as black holes, they couldn't help but be shocked. Whether it was Di Beichun or Di Xiaofeng, they were not easy to deal with. If he wanted to take their lives, he had to be prepared to fight to the death. Xiaofeng, you must be careful. Bailey Yinyan looked at Di Xiaofeng worriedly. The Jun Lingxuan in front of her made her feel an unprecedented threat. Don't worry. Di Xiaofeng turned his head and smiled warmly at Bailey Yinyan. When he turned his head again, there was a trace of determination on his jade-like face. Even if he would die here today, he would do his best to kill Jun Lingxuan. He couldn't let this guy destroy the entire Di family. The atmosphere became solemn in an instant, and time seemed to stand still. Chapter 58:58. The terrifying collision made everyone hold their breaths and stare at the two people who were moving as fast as lightning. Streaks of terrifying strength exploded in the air, making loud sonic booms. Compared to the first confrontation, the two people were undoubtedly more intense this time. This time, the fight was like a violent storm with lightning flashing and thunder rumbling. The killing intent was so dense that it almost condensed into a substance, as if it could destroy everything at any time. In terms of cultivation, Di Xiaofeng was a level higher than Qing Devil. Although Qing Devil was only at level 1 of the Radiant Moon Realm, her fighting strength was able to suppress the gap between their levels. Bang! 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 The terrifying strength shot out. If one was careless, one would be pierced through by the strength. Di Xiaofeng's expression was cold and heavy. Logically speaking, with his advantage in cultivation, he should be able to suppress Azure Demon. However, Azure Demon's spiritual energy was suppressing his spiritual energy from time to time, so his senses were slightly dulled. Under such circumstances, he had to be very careful. Otherwise, he would lose his life if he was careless. This inexplicable suppression was very uncomfortable. The most annoying thing was that Qing Devil was obviously good at this kind of method. Sometimes she suppressed, and sometimes she relaxed, so Di Xiaofeng had to concentrate. This was going to be a tough fight. When people noticed that Di Xiaofeng, who had a higher cultivation, was suppressed by Qing Devil, they were even more shocked. They had never known that Jun Lingxuan had such a fighting strength. If he had been able to do this before, he would not have been suppressed by Di Beichun all the time. Only Nangong Yuqing looked at the scene seriously. He had thought that Di Beichun was lying to him. However, at this moment, he suddenly realized that Di Beichun was probably telling the truth. Jun Lingxuan was really possessed. Although there were many questions that people couldn't figure out, he was sure that it was true. Suddenly, people felt a terrifying and powerful aura of metal property appear. The whole world seemed to be in a sword formation. The sharp sword chi made people's hair stand on end. Thousands of sharp swords appeared around Qing Devil. The sharp swords kept spinning, and the golden sword light was even more dazzling than the sun. The sharp sword energy made people tremble. Looking at the sword formation before him, Di Xiaofeng felt the threat of death in his heart. The power of this move was absolutely terrifying. If he couldn't break this move, he would definitely die here today. He slowly turned around and looked at the familiar yellow figure. Then, he looked at the cultivators from the Bailey family. A vicious look flashed across his deep eyes. He had no way out. Once he retreated, he would be unable to protect the people behind him. Qing Devil smiled coldly. The cultivators in the upper world didn't have enough control over the power of attributes. If Di Xiaofeng was also good at these things, then he would have lost today. Unfortunately, Di Xiaofeng hadn't mastered these methods yet. Therefore, he would definitely die this time. Everyone shook their heads and sighed. Just by looking at the changes in their expressions, they could tell who was stronger. Xiao Sei-wu looked at Di Xiaofeng with resentment. Right now, she felt incomparably disgusted with everyone in the Di clan. Only when these people died would she be happy. Xiaofeng. Bailey Yin called softly. Her watery almond eyes were vaguely moist. If you die, I'll accompany you. Di Xiaofeng smiled warmly. Under the sunlight, it was extremely dazzling. Chapter 58-59. When Di Xiaofeng firmly turned his gaze back, a crazy and bloodthirsty light climbed up his deep eyes. It was demonic and strange. Nine-tailed inferno fox. Di Xiaofeng shouted coldly, and a cold and terrifying aura suddenly erupted with him as the center. Suddenly, the wind whistled, and dark clouds covered the sun. The whole world darkened. Di Xiaofeng's hair fluttered, setting off his godlike handsome face. It was even more captivating and breathtaking. The surrounding temperature suddenly rose and became dry and hot. In almost a short time, everyone was sweating profusely. This temperature was much higher than when Di Xiaofeng had used his fire attribute. An extremely dazzling figure appeared out of thin air in front of everyone. The fiery red figure was burning with terrifying flames. Its 9 tails swayed in the air, enchanting and charming. However, its eyes were like black holes, emitting a heart-palpitating light. It was as if it could see into the depths of one's heart with a single glance, bringing endless pressure. Time seemed to have frozen for a moment. Everyone stared blankly at the 9-tailed inferno fox that suddenly appeared, and their eyes were filled with shock. What demonic beast is this? What a terrifying fire attribute. Could it be Di Xiaofeng's contract beast? Under this pressure, everyone found it difficult to even speak. The 9-tailed inferno fox was like a king, and no one dared to profane it. Qing Devil looked at the 9-tailed inferno fox that suddenly appeared in front of him, and his expression froze for a moment. You actually tamed the 9-tailed inferno fox? Di Xiaofeng's eyes were cold, and his voice was as cold as a glacier. You're not the only one with a trump card. With your cultivation, it's impossible to tame the 9-tailed inferno fox. Qing Devil frowned, and his heart was filled with shock. However, he had some understanding of the 9-tailed inferno fox. With the 9-tailed inferno fox's terrifying strength, how could a radiant moon realm cultivator tame it? All of a sudden, the Azure Fiend figured it out. You must have used the method of sacrifice to make it fight for you, right? Just like how he had stayed in this ancient battlefield for too many years, the 9-tailed inferno fox was the same. They were too lonely and didn't want to be imprisoned in this place forever. So what? Di Xiaofeng's expression was calm. A strange smile slowly appeared on his lips. You really aren't Jun Lingxuan. He wouldn't have such knowledge. When he first saw the 9-tailed inferno fox, he was filled with shock. The 9-tailed inferno fox was different from the demonic beasts he usually came into contact with. There had never been a 9-tailed inferno fox in the upper realm, so it was impossible for Jun Lingxuan to know. Following Di Xiaofeng's words, the way everyone looked at Jun Lingxuan suddenly changed. They had never even heard of the 9-tailed inferno fox, but Jun Lingxuan was able to determine what method Di Xiaofeng used to make the 9-tailed inferno fox attack. This in itself was very unusual. Qing Devil's face darkened. The appearance of the 9-tailed inferno fox really surprised him, so he didn't think about it for a while. Feeling that everyone was looking at him differently, he understood that this layer of disguise was meaningless. You tried so hard to expose me. Do you think I care? Qing Devil chuckled. I don't care about these at all. Compared to Jun Lingxuan's appearance, I prefer yours. Chapter 58-60. He admitted it. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, he actually admitted it so calmly. Xiao Soa looked at Qing Devil in disbelief. They had agreed that as long as she was there, no one could expose Qing Devil's disguise. However, since the Azure Fiend had admitted to it, there was no way to turn the situation around. All the cultivators of the Jun family were dumbfounded. When they looked at Qing Devil again, their eyes were full of hatred. It turned out that the man in front of them was no longer their young master, but the one who killed him. How could this be? Xiao Sudong was also stunned. Recently, he had been wondering why Jun Lingshuan's cultivation had improved so much. However, after learning that Jun Lingshuan got an opportunity at the bottom of the lake, he put this doubt aside. However, who would have thought that all this was a disguise? The man in front of them was not Jun Lingshuan at all. "Sister, do you know about this?" Xiao Sudong grabbed Xiao Sou's arm, his face full of worry. He knew that his sister had finally found someone she liked, but now Jun Lingshuan was dead. How painful it must be for her. Xiao Sou had no time to care about the pain on her face at this moment. This sudden situation was beyond her expectation. For a moment, she didn't know how to answer it all. If she said that she knew, then everyone would look at her strangely. But if she said that she didn't know, then how could she be with Qing Devil? In her opinion, this situation was more complicated than the condition of her face. However, she had no way to deal with the man in front of her. She didn't even have the right to blame him. Looking at Xiao Sou's dull face, everyone thought that she didn't know about this matter, which made them even more shocked. Xiao Sou can't even recognize her own fiancé. Isn't this too exaggerated? If Jun Lingshuan knew all this, he would be depressed to death. If it wasn't for Di Xiaofeng exposing all of this, who knows when this secret would be known by others. Jun Lingshuan has become ridiculously strong recently. Normally, he wouldn't have such combat strength. Everyone finally understood. The problem that they couldn't figure out before was finally solved. So, from the beginning to the end, it wasn't the same person. Facing the domineering Qing Devil, Di Xiaofeng only smiled faintly. That depends on whether you have the ability to take it away. In the next instant, Di Xiaofeng turned his gaze to the nine-tailed inferno fox. Feeling Di Xiaofeng's gaze, the nine-tailed inferno fox turned its head, and its black hole-like eyes finally flashed with a trace of light. Then, under everyone's shocked gazes, the nine-tailed inferno fox directly charged into Di Xiaofeng's body. In his line of sight, Di Xiaofeng's figure became even bigger, and his black hair turned into a dazzling red. His already tall and straight figure became even more muscular, and his terrifying aura was like that of a ferocious beast, causing one's heart to tremble. This feeling was like a demonic beast that had been sleeping for a long time, suddenly awakening, exuding a heart-palpitating power. The fiery red flames wrapped around his body, making him look like a flaming god of war. Gulp. Looking at Di Xiaofeng like this, everyone couldn't help but swallow their saliva. So terrifying. Just looking at Di Xiaofeng like this, they didn't even dare to think of fighting him. Chapter 58-61. Nangong Yuqing, Xiao Sou, Xiao Sudong. Everyone looked at the flaming figure in shock. If Di Xiaofeng's opponent wasn't Jun Lingshuan but them, none of them would be able to escape this time. None of them would be Di Xiaofeng's opponent. Fusion martial technique. Qing Devil narrowed his eyes and put away his previous joking attitude. His expression was unprecedentedly serious. He knew how terrifying the nine-tailed inferno fox was. Even at his peak, he didn't dare to provoke it. Fortunately, the nine-tailed inferno fox was also in a soul state. Otherwise, he wouldn't be its opponent. Qing Devil, I didn't expect you to be so lucky. The cold voice was unfamiliar and oppressive. At this moment, everyone felt as if there was a huge mountain pressing down on them. Even standing up straight was very difficult. Everyone's eyes fell on Di Xiaofeng. At this moment, Di Xiaofeng was completely different from his usual self. He emitted a coldness that spread from the bottom of his heart. His fiery red eyes were as magnificent and dazzling as fiery obsidian, but there was no emotion in them. I also didn't expect you to choose to be with a radiant moon realm cultivator. Qing Devil said slowly. Instead of following him, why don't you follow me? What do you think? Bailey Union's heart tightened. She didn't expect the nine-tailed inferno fox to know Qing Devil. The nine-tailed inferno fox was their opportunity. Di Xiaofeng tried his best to make the nine-tailed inferno fox form a contract with him. However, it wasn't a master-servant contract. It was just a simple contract. As long as the nine-tailed inferno fox didn't want to, it could be canceled at any time. Although they were helpless about this, they understood that they couldn't make the nine-tailed inferno fox submit with their strength. Even if it had to pay a price for the nine-tailed Inferno Fox's help. It was worth it as a life-saving trump card. However, if the nine-tailed Inferno Fox chose to be with Ching Devil, there was no room for negotiation. Ching Devil, you're not tempting to me. Instead of working with a guy like you, I'd rather work with this little guy. At the very least, others are much more honest and trustworthy than you. Ching Devil's face suddenly turned cold. So, you insist on fighting with me? You think you can threaten me? A dangerous aura flashed in his fiery red eyes. In the next moment, Di Xiaofeng moved. After the nine-tailed Inferno Fox entered his body, the nine-tailed Inferno Fox was able to control his body. Of course, he could still control it with his consciousness. However, because the nine-tailed Inferno Fox was stronger than him, it was more dominant. Bang! Emperor Xiaofeng moved. His 2-meter-tall figure was as fast as lightning. He kicked Ching Devil directly. This time, Ching Devil couldn't dodge Di Xiaofeng's attack. His body fell heavily to the ground, but he quickly stood up again. It seems that you have yet to completely fuse with this body. Your cultivation has been restricted. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox's voice rang out. It's only a matter of time. Ching Devil stood up straight. At least I'm better than you. You don't even have a physical body. That's my business. I don't need your nonsense. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox said, since I've received benefits, I'll help him defeat you completely. Go to hell. Chapter 58-62. Bang, 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 bang. Emperor Xiaofeng's attack was as fast as thunder, landing on Ching Devil mercilessly. Even though they were just spectators, everyone could still hear the screeching sound. Bang! Ching Devil's figure was blown away again. A deep pit appeared on the ground. This time, the Azure Fiend stood up at a slower speed than before. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Ching Devil's face was extremely cold. Nine-tailed Inferno Fox, it seems that you're going to fight for real. Why don't you find your life weapon? Nine-tailed Inferno Fox sneered. If you don't find it, you'll die in my hands. Ching Devil snorted. Now that you've said so, we can only fight to the death. I'm not afraid of a fight to the death. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox's smile was unbridled and unbridled, with an imposing manner that was not afraid of anything. Ching Devil's eyes flashed with a touch of determination. In the next second, a vigorous aura burst out from his body. His hands suddenly turned over, and mysterious seals appeared quietly one by one. A horrible aura spread out, and the onlookers could not help but tremble, as if something was being summoned. The ground began to tremble at this moment. Everyone looked at the trembling ground, worried that it would collapse at any time. Zheng! A huge, deep pit suddenly appeared on the ground in front of Ching Devil, and a dazzling golden light flashed. The onlookers felt the ground suddenly shake, and then they found a golden halberd in the deep pit. This golden halberd did not have too many complicated decorations, but the horrible aura it released made people dare not ignore it. Emperor Xiaofeng's heart suddenly jumped when he saw this halberd. This halberd seemed to have been baptized by blood, and it was full of murderous intent, which was daunting. He could not help thinking of the tragic scene on the battlefield that he had seen before. Ching Devil should have been one of them. This halberd might have been summoned by him from the battlefield. Even if he didn't know everything, he could roughly guess. Back then, the Ching Devil died on the battlefield. Her soul was preserved only because she was lucky or she had some extraordinary treasures. It was only after he possessed Junling Xuan that he was reborn. Ching Devil lifted the long halberd with one hand, a trace of nostalgia flashing across her face. It was a familiar feeling. Everything was familiar. Back then, he had used this halberd to make a name for himself, but he had never thought that he would end up in such a desolate place and almost disappear along with history. You can make your move now. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox obviously wasn't in the mood to let Ching Devil reminisce about the past. She had already launched a fierce punch. Ching Devil held the long halberd as if he had found his soul. As he waved the long halberd, the terrifying energy rippled and blocked the nine-tailed Inferno Fox's attack. It was not until this moment that the crowd realized the real strength of Ching Devil. Compared to being beaten passively before, he could finally start a fight back now. The onlookers unconsciously retreated hundreds of meters. The horror of the battle in front of them was beyond their understanding. This kind of power was not something they could touch. If they were in this battlefield, they would have been pierced into sieves in a short time. Every attack was so terrifying. However, no one left. Chapter 58:63. The power of fire and metal kept colliding with each other, and the power of each attack was enough to cover the sky and cover the sun. For a moment, there was only red and gold in everyone's eyes, nothing else. Xiao Shou stared blankly at the Qing devil who was like a god of war, and her eyes couldn't help but reveal an infatuated look. Only a peerless hero like him was the one she admired. A trace of madness flashed in her eyes. As long as she could be with the Qing devil, she didn't care whether the Qing devil was the one who killed Jun Lingxuan or not. Even if the Jun family didn't accept the Qing devil, the Xiao family's strength would be greatly improved if he joined the Xiao family. At that time, even without the Jun family, she would be fearless. Di Xiaofeng and the Qing devil were fighting fiercely. Even if the Qing devil's fighting strength had soared after obtaining the natal weapon, he could still feel that the nine-tailed Inferno Fox's strength was stronger than the Qing devil's. Now the nine-tailed Inferno Fox was just in a soul state. It was hard to imagine how powerful the nine-tailed Inferno Fox was in its heyday. Boom! The power of fire whizzed past, and the Qing devil was directly pressed under the giant tiger formed by the fire. Qing devil, you are no match for me. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox showed a disdainful look. The Qing devil was indeed a good existence among human cultivators, but he was not qualified to deal with her. The Qing devil's face turned ugly. There is no conflict between you and me. Why do you have to help him? Everyone has their own opportunities. I made a deal with him first. Speaking of which, you should be the one who is strange. Why do you have to make trouble for us? The nine-tailed Inferno Fox's voice was extremely cold. In this case, I can only kill you. Anyway, you should have died long ago. In the next moment, the nine-tailed Inferno Fox attacked again and crushed the Qing devil without hesitation. Everyone widened their eyes. They didn't expect such an ending. For a moment, everyone couldn't help but envy Di Xiaofeng. Although they didn't know what price Di Xiaofeng paid for the nine-tailed Inferno Fox to help him. With such a life-saving trump card, ordinary people wouldn't dare to go against him. Otherwise, no one would be a match for the nine-tailed Inferno Fox. However, the moment he attacked, Di Xiaofeng's movement paused for a moment. Brother, it's me. In his line of sight, the azure devil who had fallen to the ground had unknowingly become Di Beichun. Di Xiaofeng's eyes flashed with confusion. Beichun, what are you doing here? When everyone realized that Di Xiaofeng actually called Azure Demon Beichun, they were all stunned. What was going on? Why did Xiaofeng's Qing's? Azure Demon, you still like to use this method to confuse people. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox's Inferno no to the ding, 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 the Qing at the ding, 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 ding. The Qing, however, in that short period of time, Azure Demon's figure had already fled at top speed. Xiao Shou and the others left quickly after seeing this scene. Without the Qing devil, the nine-tailed Inferno Fox could kill them as easily as killing a fly. This guy is really cunning. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox frowned. The reason why the Qing devil could escape was because of this trick. Even if they could see through the illusion, for existences with their strength, even a short moment was enough for them to escape. Chapter 58:64. There's no need. Di Xiaofeng shook his head. After understanding Qing devil strength, he also understood that it was not easy to kill this person. What's more, he had to pay a price for the nine-tailed Inferno Fox to enter his body. The longer it took, the greater the price. If he couldn't catch up with Qing devil, wouldn't it be terrible? Hearing Di Xiaofeng's words, a trace of disappointment flashed in the nine-tailed Inferno Fox's eyes. In the next second, it retreated from Di Xiaofeng's body. Everyone looked at the powerful fiery red figure in front of them and couldn't help but exclaim in their hearts. Such a demonic beast was simply an existence that people looked up to. From now on, they were afraid that none of them would be Di Xiaofeng's opponent. Di Xiaofeng just glanced at everyone coldly. Everyone was nervous and didn't dare to stay here any longer and left one after another. However, everyone was guessing in their hearts. What price did Di Xiaofeng pay to get the nine-tailed inferno fox to help? After everyone left, Di Xiaofeng sat on the ground weakly. There was a burning pain in his body. The nine-tailed inferno fox's flame was different from ordinary flames. In addition, they were not in a contractual relationship. Just entering his body for a short time had already exceeded his load. You know very well the price you need to pay. The nine-tailed inferno fox faintly left a sentence and disappeared from everyone's sight. Bailey Yunyan immediately ran to Di Xiaofeng's side. Looking at the latter's pale face, her pretty face was filled with worry. "Xiaofeng, how are you?" Di Xiaofeng opened his mouth, but didn't even have time to say a word before he fainted. "Xiaofeng, Xiaofeng." Bailey Yunyan called nervously, but Di Xiaofeng was obviously extremely tired and couldn't wake up at all. Bailey Yunyan took out an elixir from the storage ring and put it into Di Xiaofeng's mouth. Then she looked at the people behind her and said, "We'll stay here for the time being and guard Xiaofeng well." The cultivators of the Bailey family nodded. The previous scene kept replaying in their minds and couldn't be forgotten for a long time. That was a real powerhouse. That was the power they pursued. However, the unconscious man in front of them was their hero. If it wasn't for Di Xiaofeng blocking all of this, their heads would have already been separated from their bodies. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others who were cultivating saw a golden light suddenly sweep across the sky, their faces revealed astonishment. What was that flash of golden light just now? Jiang Wenyan revealed a look of surprise. That ray of light was really too dazzling, and when it passed by, it lit up the entire area around them. Di Beichen's handsome face revealed that he was deep in thought. I felt an extremely powerful metal attribute aura from that golden light, but I don't know what it is. The aura just now was very powerful, and it doesn't seem to be very far from us. Ling muttered, "I think it's a weapon, but other than the cultivators from the ancient battlefield, no one else should be able to use that weapon." As Linger's voice fell, everyone looked at each other, and a guess suddenly appeared in their minds. Could it be the Qing devil? Bailey Hongzhuang rolled her eyes, and a terrible idea came to her mind. Chapter 5865. Should we go and take a look? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun with a worried expression on her delicate face. They were naturally unwilling to see the Qing devil. However, they had yet to find Di Xiaofeng. Now that the Qing devil had suddenly summoned his weapon, it was very likely that he had met his match. No matter who the opponent was, as long as it was the Qing devil's opponent, it would be their friend. This might be an opportunity for them. Di Beichen nodded and jumped out of the luais. With a solemn expression, he said, "Let's go." Bai Li Yin Che, Jiang Wenyan, and the rest quickly left the luais. They had to go and take a look at the current situation. "Don't worry. Stay here for the time being." Noticing that the other cultivators were preparing to come out, Bailey Hongzhuang reminded them. They had already seen the Qing devil's strength. He was stronger than them. If they were to bring the team forward at this time, it was very likely that everyone would be in danger. Rather than that, they might as well go and take a look. If there was danger, they could escape faster. The cultivators of the Great Devil Sect and the Murong family were stunned. After seeing Chun Feng and Murong Jing nod, they entered the luais again. Everyone walked forward. As a beast king, Bai Li Yin Che was extremely sensitive to auras. Even if the golden light had disappeared for a while, he could still find traces of it. However, as they got closer and closer to their destination, Bai Li Yin Che's expression became more and more solemn. "I can feel the aura of the nine-tailed inferno fox." Ling O's expression changed. "I didn't expect that there would be a nine-tailed inferno fox in the ancient battlefield. Moreover, this is not a young fox. It is an adult nine-tailed inferno fox. How is this possible?" Ling Er's gaze suddenly focused, and her expression became unprecedentedly solemn. The killing power of an adult nine-tailed inferno fox is extremely terrifying. All the cultivators who entered the ancient battlefield are not its match. Could it be that the Qing devil suddenly summoned his weapon to deal with this nine-tailed inferno fox? Chun Feng could not help but ask. What's a nine-tailed inferno fox? He had never heard of the nine-tailed inferno fox. The nine-tailed inferno fox is an extremely powerful race. The nine-tailed fox race has always been a mysterious existence. However, they're the same as our dragon race and rarely appear in front of everyone. An adult nine-tailed fox, I'm afraid that even Grandma Hua may not be able to defeat it. Bailey Yinche turned his gaze to Bailey Hongzhuang. If Bailey Hongzhuang did not know much about the nine-tailed inferno fox before, she understood when she heard the last sentence. He was comparable to Granny Flower, or even more powerful than her. Not to mention the cultivators who entered the ancient battlefield. Even in the entire upper realm, there was probably no one who could deal with it. Such a terrifying person was indeed a disaster. Yinche, aren't you a beast king? Is your strength comparable to this guy? Murong Jing asked doubtfully. From his understanding, the Beast King should be the strongest existence among the demonic beasts. Although he had never heard of this nine-tailed inferno fox before, and the various situations that he came into contact with now frequently refreshed his understanding, he still felt that this should not be wrong, right? This nine-tailed inferno fox is an adult demonic beast. I am still not an adult yet. If I become an adult, it won't be my match. A trace of pride flashed in by Li Yinche's eyes. He was a beast king, the king of all beasts.